Chapter 6:16. When everyone heard the first half of the speech, their blood was boiling, but when they heard the last sentence, they all shivered. Even though they had not been in contact with Leng Shiqi for a long time, they were very clear about his misdeeds. If anyone really dared to walk out now, only a corpse would be left. Everyone immediately shouted in unison, "This subordinate will do his best to share Sir's worries." Leng Shiqi waved his hand and ordered, "Very good, I will give you half a day to prepare. Tomorrow, you will directly teleport to the Western Desolate Province." Everyone retreated one after another. Leng Shiqi also planned to prepare, but a voice came from outside. "Greetings, Miss Lianyi." "Congratulations, Miss Lianyi's cultivation has improved again. Miss Lianyi is here to see Sir Lu, right? Please come in." Leng Shiqi's footsteps paused. He turned to look outside and saw Lianyi walking over. He could not help but think, what is she doing here again? Nothing good. He still remembered that last time. In order to help Lianyi get rid of the 9th Prince Lei Haoqing, he even did something like assassinating a prince. What was she planning this time? However, Lianyi was after all the adopted daughter of the Dark Thunder Guard's commander, Heavenly Sovereign Black Flame. For this relationship, he should still welcome her. "Miss Lianyi, long time no see. It hasn't been long. You don't seem to want to see me?" Lianyi narrowed her eyes. Leng Shiqi immediately shook his head and said, "What are you saying? Miss Lianyi, may I know why you have come here?" "Boring." Lianyi curled her lips and said, "I came to thank you. Last time, when you went to assassinate Lei Haoqing, I did not expect that it would cause a series of disturbances. Fortunately, it did not implicate you. However, the effect was quite good. Since then, Lei Haoqing has been holed up and has not caused any trouble for me. As for the shield you mentioned, there is no need for that. This is what I should do. There is no need to thank me. Actually, there is absolutely no need for me. It is just that father insisted that I come." Lianyi gave Leng Shiqi a strange look and continued, "Father, he wants to see you." "What?" Leng Shiqi was shocked. Heavenly Venerable Black Flame wanted to see him? In Leng Shiqi's impression, the commander of the Dark Thunder Guards, Heavenly Lord He Yen, was extremely mysterious. Not to mention him, even the people who had been in the Dark Thunder Guard's headquarters for several years had never seen Heavenly Lord He Yen appear. But now, Heavenly Venerable Black Flame actually wanted to see him. For a time, all sorts of thoughts flashed through Leng Shiqi's mind. He couldn't think of why Empyrean Black Flame wanted to see him, but it shouldn't be anything bad. "I also find it very strange. Foster father rarely takes the initiative to meet people. You can be considered to have hit the jackpot," Lianyi said sourly. Leng Shiqi smiled. "That's all thanks to Miss Lianyi's recommendation. May I know where the Grand Commander is, and when can we go see him?" "I don't know where foster father is, but you can see him right now." Lianyi suddenly said something that didn't make sense. Soon after, a black flame bloomed in her palm. Suddenly the world changed. Leng Shiqi instantly arrived in a black flame hell. In the sky, a giant face slowly appeared. A face completely composed of countless black flames condensed. When the giant eyes opened, Leng Shiqi felt a terrifying pressure fall on him like Mount Tai. Leng Shiqi's face immediately paled. All the muscles in his body seemed to be squeezed to the point of bursting. He almost couldn't stand still. He let out a low shout and instantly activated the wild evil demon blood beast body. An ancient evil, an ominous aura filled the air. At the same time, he used the throbbing pulse of the earth. The powerful anti-gravity force propped up a curtain of light to make him feel better. Suddenly, the pressure disappeared without a trace, and a deep voice rang out. "You do have some skills." Leng Shiqi cupped his fists towards the sky and said, "Greetings, Grand Commander." Heavenly Sage He Yen suddenly asked, "Did you kill Li Zhongtao?" Hearing this, Leng Shiqi's heart tightened. He didn't know what the relationship between Heavenly Sage He Yen and the Li family was, and he couldn't hear anything from the other's tone. However, he still raised his head and said, "Yes." "Did you also kill Li Xinhong and Li Xinqi?" "Yes." There were very few people who knew about the death of the Li brothers. It seemed that Li Jueqing might have sent a message to Heavenly Sage He Yen. Leng Shiqi didn't deny it. He thought that Heavenly Sage He Yin would blame him, but unexpectedly, Heavenly Sage He Yin said 3 words. Good job, Leng Shiqi. Hearing these 3 words, Leng Shiqi instantly thought of many things. He was now sure that even the Grand Commander didn't want the Li family to continue taking root in the Dark Thunder Guard. Especially in this turbulent time, once the new emperor ascended the throne, the Li family would have the opportunity to seize more positions. At that time, it would be even more difficult to solve this problem. Leng Shiqi killed Li Zhangtao in Ningyang County and took away the Li family's money tree. It could be said that he cut off one of the Li family's arms. He also killed the Li brothers in the Heavenly Tomb, which could be considered as breaking the Li family's foundation. Right now, the Li clan had Li Jueqing and several experts who were at the unity of heaven and man realm supporting them. The youngest generation also had good potential. However, the problem was that when Li Jueqing's generation had either aged or died, the younger generation had yet to grow to the point where they could support the Li clan. Then, at that time, the Li family would fall into an extremely dangerous situation where there was a shortage of manpower. Therefore, although Leng Shiqi only killed 3 people from the Li family, these 3 people were very important to the Li family. Leng Shiqi himself didn't expect that he only wanted to complete Eunuch Gao's mission and avenge himself. In the end, he went along with the Grand Commander's wishes. It could be said that he unintentionally planted a willow tree, and it became a shade. Heavenly Sage He Yin reminded him. However, Li Jueqing is not magnanimous. You have to be careful. Leng Shiqi had already experienced Li Jueqing's magnanimity. However, Heavenly Sage He Yin did remind him that his trip to the Western Desolate County was not a secret. Li Jueqing would naturally know. If Leng Shiqi stayed in the imperial capital, Li Jueqing might not be able to kill him. However, if he left the imperial capital and went to the borderlands, where the emperor was far away, Li Jueqing would very likely secretly attack him. Therefore, he had always been very vigilant. Then again, did Heavenly Sage He Yin want to see him just to ask him this? There must be something else. Sure enough, Heavenly Sage He Yin continued. Your trip to the Western Desolate County is not only to smoothly welcome the envoys of the Starfall dynasty and the 6 kingdoms of the Western region. There is also an even more important mission. At the end, Heavenly Sage He Yin's tone was a bit heavy. This made Leng Shiqi feel that the mission was definitely not simple. Please tell me, Grand Commander. You also need to secretly sow discord between the 6 kingdoms of the Western region and the Starfall dynasty, especially between the Golden Tribe and the Tuoba Kingdom. In addition, that girl Lian Yi will go with you. The 6 kingdoms of the Western region were the Zhulu Kingdom, the Beilu Kingdom, the Jushur Kingdom, the Golden Tribe, and the Tuoba Kingdom. These 6 small kingdoms constantly had friction with each other, and they were also on good terms with the Thunderblaze dynasty and the Starfall dynasty. Due to their geographical location, the Zhulu Kingdom and the Beilu Kingdom were leaning towards the Thunderblaze dynasty, while the Golden Tribe and the Tuoba Kingdom were on good terms with the Starfall dynasty. As for the Jushur Kingdom and the Great Yuezhi Kingdom, they were located in the center of the 6 kingdoms of the Western region. They were also the 2 strongest kingdoms. Leng Shiqi listened to Heavenly Sage He Yan's words. It seemed that he wanted the Golden Tribe, the Tuoba Kingdom, and the Starfall dynasty to become enemies. If he could really do this, the Starfall dynasty would definitely be flustered for a while. Perhaps they would not have so much time to deal with the Thunderblaze dynasty. However, the problem was that instigating the relationship between the 3 parties conflicted with Leng Shiqi's mission. The mission given to him by Eunuch Gao was to investigate the innocence of the people who came to celebrate the birthday, and secretly protect the diplomatic group as they entered the imperial capital. However, if Leng Shiqi instigated the relationship between the 3 parties, it would be hard to avoid some trouble. At that time, it would be easier said than done to smoothly enter the imperial capital. This mission was not simple. However, what made Leng Shiqi puzzled was, why would Lian Yi follow him? It was not that Leng Shiqi looked down on her, but that Lian Yi's cultivation was still at the early stage of the Spirit Aperture realm. Any of the War Thunder Guards under him had a higher cultivation than her, so there was no need for her to fight. As for ability and strategy, Leng Shiqi admitted that Lian Yi was indeed more mature than before. However, compared to those experienced Dark Thunder Guards, she was still far from being comparable. Bringing Lian Yi with him was the same as bringing a burden. Of course, he could not say this out loud. No matter how difficult it was in his heart, he still said, "Commander, please be at ease. This subordinate will definitely complete the mission." Since the commander had personally spoken, there was no reason for him to refuse. Moreover, whether it was strength or influence, he had already formed his wings. It was not impossible for him to complete the mission. "I didn't expect you to agree so easily." Heavenly Sage Heiyan said, "I will be frank. Lian Yi will go with you to accumulate some merits." At this moment, Leng Shiqi bitterly smiled in his heart. Eunuch Gao and the commander were both stuffing people with him to gain merits. Weren't they too confident in him? From another point of view, Lian Yi was the commander's adopted daughter, yet she still wanted to accumulate merits. It could be seen that the commander also attached great importance to the rules of the Dark Thunder Guards. Otherwise, he could have just directly arranged a position for Lian Yi. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Heavenly Sage Heiyan continued, "I see that you have a heavenly strange flame in your body. You know the power of heavenly variants the best. If you can successfully return from the Western Desolate Province, I can give you a piece of information. A piece of information that records the location of heavenly variants." Whoosh! Leng Shiqi suddenly raised his head, his eyes revealing undisguised joy. He was well aware of the power of heavenly variants. His crimson gold earth dragon flame had yet to meet a match. If he could obtain another heavenly variant, no matter what attribute it was, it would definitely cause his strength to explosively rise once more. However, before Leng Shiqi could speak, the world of black flames suddenly began to disperse. Heavenly Sage Heiyan said, "The time has come. I await your good news." Immediately after, the scene in front of Leng Shiqi changed, and he once again saw the familiar Xingji Pavilion. He said to Lian Yi, who was still waiting on the side, "Miss Lian Yi, prepare to go to the Western Desolate Province." Chapter 617. West Wilderness Prefecture, Hanzhou City. At this moment, there were 3 people wearing the same clothes standing in front of the gate of Dark Thunder residence. Everyone had a worried look on their faces. Their cultivation was not weak. The leader was at the middle stage of Gang Spirit Realm, and the 2 behind him were at the late stage of Spirit Aperture Realm. At this moment, a person behind him said, "Elder Ji, are you sure it's here?" Elder Ji nodded solemnly. "I didn't want to believe it at first, but I've confirmed it several times. It can't be wrong. But this is Dark Thunder Guard. It's not good for the sect to offend Dark Thunder Guard rashly." "I know," Elder Ji growled. "But the Wind Thunder Divine Luck Stone is the sect's most valuable treasure. Without this item, those disciples will not be able to cultivate the highest grade of cultivation technique. If this continues, the Wind Thunder Tower will be completely destroyed in a few decades." It turned out that the leader was Ji Dong, the elder of Wind Thunder Tower, a second-rate sect in West Wilderness Prefecture. After Leng Shiqi and 9 Leave joined hands to steal the Wind Thunder Godly Luck Stone, Ji Dong had been tracking the whereabouts of the Wind Thunder Godly Luck Stone. Later, when the array in Wind Thunder Tower to sense the Godly Luck Stone collapsed, Ji Dong thought that the Godly Luck Stone might have been destroyed. But he didn't give up, or rather, he still had a trace of hope in his heart. So for a long time, he set up a small array and kept looking for the place where the Godly Luck Stone disappeared. Until a few days ago he finally found it. That was Hanzhou City's Dark Thunder residence. At first, Ji Dong thought that he had found the wrong place. But after many confirmations, the last breath of the Godly Luck Stone had indeed disappeared here. Ji Dong also remembered that Lu Xingji, the great supervisor of North Prefecture, also participated in the Demon Extermination Assembly and went to the Treasure Pavilion. He was more or less suspicious. If it was somewhere else, Ji Dong would have rushed in directly. But this was Dark Thunder Guard. Even Wind Thunder Tower didn't dare to provoke Dark Thunder Guard. After all, no one wanted to be watched in secret every day, which made them unable to eat or sleep well. They were afraid that they would be caught if they made a mistake. However, the Godly Luck Stone was too important to Wind Thunder Tower. It could even affect the rise and fall of the sect. He had to come and ask clearly. After struggling for a while, Jidong still decided to go in and ask, which led to the current scene. The two guards in front of Dark Thunder Manor saw Jidong, and the others standing there for a long time. Finally, they couldn't help but ask, "Who are you people? Why are you loitering in front of Dark Thunder Manor?" Jidong tried his best to calm himself down. He smiled and said, "I am Elder Jidong of the Wind and Thunder Tower. I am here to seek an audience with the great supervisor, Lord Lu. May I trouble you to inform him?" When the two guards heard this, they silently looked at each other. One of them said, "Lord Lu is not in the residence. Please go back. The two of you, this old man has specifically asked around. Lord Lu hasn't shown his face for a long time. I'm guessing that he must be in his residence." Jidong was still smiling as he said, "Please go in and report that this old man indeed has an extremely important matter to discuss with Lord Lu." The guard immediately said coldly, "If he's not here, then he's not here. There's no need for us to lie to you." Jidong knew that if he didn't use some tricks today, he wouldn't be able to enter the gate. Suddenly, the majestic Wind and Thunder spiritual gang rose around him with extraordinary momentum. The two guards were only in the spirit transformation realm. They were directly forced to retreat by the spiritual gang. The two of them were suppressed by the horrible momentum, and couldn't even call for help. Right at this moment, a strand of black shadow flashed by swiftly. It was a sword light, and it was like a venomous snake that was hidden in the darkness. Jidong also saw the sword light. A trace of disdain flashed in his heart. The sword light was extremely fast, but it was obviously not in the gang's spirit realm. It posed no threat to him. However, at the next moment his face suddenly changed, because the black shadow tore apart the Wind and Thunder spiritual gang around him. Although Jidong didn't use his full strength and just released his momentum to force Lu Xingji out, spiritual gang was spiritual gang after all. How could it be broken by someone in the spiritual aperture realm? He turned over his palm. Suddenly, the Wind and Thunder roared. The violent spiritual gang overflowed, and slapped the black shadow away fiercely. However, the black shadow continuously dissipated the force in the air and finally landed steadily. He was not hurt by Jidong. And this person was Qin Jianchen. "Stop!" An old voice came. Guan Feihong rushed out with Qiu Cheng, Xiao Qian and the others. They saw the scene of Qin Jianchen being slapped away, and they were all furious. Guan Feihong stared at Jidong. He recognized Jidong's identity. He cupped his fist and said, "So it's Elder Ji. The Wind and Thunder Tower is located in the North region, but Elder Ji came to my Dark Thunder Mansion to hurt people. Do you not put the Dark Thunder guards in your eyes?" The threat in his words was very obvious. The Wind and Thunder Tower was under the supervision of the Dark Thunder Mansion in Hanzhou City. Jidong dared to come to the Dark Thunder Mansion to make a move. Did he eat a bear's heart and leopard's guts? Jidong withdrew his spiritual gang and said, "I don't mean anything else. I just want to see Lord Lu." Guan Feihong frowned. Only they knew that Leng Shiqi had entered the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. Outsiders didn't know about this matter, because Leng Shiqi was still the supervisor of the North region. In the eyes of those spirit cultivation sects, Leng Shiqi might be in seclusion and didn't show up. In fact, Leng Shiqi's prestige was not small. He was the most famous in the Shantai region, and even in the imperial capital. But the West Wilderness region was located in the western border, which was too far away. If one didn't specifically inquire about Leng Shiqi, one wouldn't know. So Guan Feihong said, "Lord Lu is indeed not here." But Jidong thought that Guan Feihong was perfunctory. His spiritual gang surged around him, and his eyes became cold. "If I don't see Lu Xingji today, I won't give up." Facing the pressure of a spiritual gang realm master, Guan Feihong was not afraid at all. He said in a low voice, "Elder Ji, you should think about the consequences of offending the Dark Thunder Guards. Can your Wind and Thunder Tower bear the consequences?" "I can't care so much. I have to." However, before he could finish his sentence, 5 auras that were no weaker than Jidong's suddenly appeared out of nowhere. Everyone quickly turned around and saw hundreds of figures coming quickly. The leaders were all in the spiritual gang realm. Behind them, there were dozens of spiritual aperture realm cultivators and hundreds of spiritual pulse realm cultivators. Everyone was shocked. When did so many strong cultivators appear in Hanzhou City? These people could easily annihilate a second-rate sect. But immediately, Guan Feihong and Ji Dong's expressions changed greatly. Guan Feihong was surprised and happy, while Ji Dong's face was black. Because when the group of experts came closer, they saw that they were wearing the clothes of the Dark Thunder Guards. Even though their clothes were slightly different from Guan Feihong and Qin Jianchen, they were still very similar. In the Thunderflame dynasty, only the Dark Lightning Guards would wear this kind of clothing. Ji Dong was stunned. He didn't understand where these experts came from. Even if all the Dark Thunder Guards in the West Wilderness region were gathered together, there might not be so many. He didn't understand, but he knew that he was in danger. The people who came here were naturally the 5 War Thunder Guards under Leng Shiqi, as well as many secret Thunder Guards who were in charge of intelligence investigation. They didn't expect that they would encounter someone who came to trouble the Dark Thunder Guards as soon as they arrived in Hanzhou City. Elder Huang and the other spiritual gang realm cultivators all snorted and instantly blocked Ji Dong with various spiritual gang realms. Their eyes were cold. The rest of the hundreds of experts also surrounded the 3 of them, eyeing them covetously. The 2 spiritual Aperture Realm disciples of the Wind Thunder Tower had never seen such a scene before. They were scared out of their wits. At this moment, a slight sound of footsteps was heard, and all the Dark Thunder Guards silently opened up a path, and a figure walked towards them. This person was wearing a purple cloak and a feathered official hat. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle's. Seeing this person's face, Guan Feihong, Qiu Cheng, Xiao Qian and the others' pupils shrank and then turned into boundless joy. When this person stood still, the Dark Thunder Guards of Hanzhou City and the Dark Thunder Guards of the imperial capital all knelt down and shouted, "Greetings, my lord!" Chapter 618. In front of the gate of the Dark Thunder Mansion, many people knelt down in an instant, leaving only 4 people standing. Ji Dong looked at this scene in a daze. Wasn't the person standing in front of him Lu Xingji whom he had to see? He was really not in the mansion. Lu Xingji. As soon as Ji Dong opened his mouth, several inspectors of Gang Spirit Realm took action at the same time. All kinds of Gang Spirit Realm burst out and pressed on Ji Dong. Ji Dong was shocked and quickly resisted, but he was a spiritual caster. If he was well prepared, his combat power would be infinite. But how could he resist the sudden attack of 5 masters of Gang Spirit Realm? He was injured by several people in an instant, and a trace of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. One of the inspectors shouted, "How dare you call His Excellency's name directly? How dare you? Don't be so irritable. Elder Ji and I are old acquaintances." But Leng Shiqi waved his hand and said very calmly, "Elder Ji, you insist on seeing me. What is the matter?" Ji Dong forcibly suppressed the spiritual power that was about to go berserk in his body. Seeing Leng Shiqi's attitude seemed to be easy to talk to, he cupped his hands and said, "Lord Lu, I'll be frank. My Wind and Thunder Tower's most precious treasure, the Wind and Thunder Stone, has been stolen. You should know this." Leng Shiqi nodded and did not deny it, but he had already guessed Ji Dong's intention. "In that case, it's easy to say. I perceive through the formation that the Wind and Thunder Stone finally disappeared in the Dark Thunder Mansion. Lord Lu, please tell me the truth. Is the Wind and Thunder Stone in your hands?" After he finished speaking, he looked straight at Leng Shiqi, as if he wanted to see something from Leng Shiqi's expression. However, what he never expected was that Leng Shiqi suddenly took action. Suddenly, the strange Nirvana wind burst out, and a terrible storm suddenly formed, sending out visible ripples. Even the spiritual power of heaven and earth was stirred up. Whirlwind. Ji Dong didn't expect that Leng Shiqi would suddenly take action. What shocked him even more was that Leng Shiqi's power was even stronger than that of several Gang Spirit Realm masters just now. However, he also felt a trace of the Wind and Thunder God's Luck Stone from the Leng Shiqi's Nirvana Remnant Wind. The Wind Thunder Divine Luck Stone was indeed obtained by him. Ji Dong didn't have time to form a seal, but he tapped the space between his eyebrows. With a wung sound, a fierce wind suddenly appeared, and an astral wind spiritual array appeared out of thin air, protecting him firmly within. The power of Nirvana in the Nirvana Remnant Wind was constantly eroding the power of the formation. At the same time, Leng Shiqi raised his hand. Dark clouds covered the sky and thunder exploded. An incomparably gigantic lightning hand descended, and its might seemed as if it wanted to kill Jidong directly. Amethyst lightning hand. Jidong's eyes widened. It was already his limit to block the Nirvana remnant wind. How could he block the sky-covering thunder hand? In a hurry, he had to take out a flying shuttle. Unfortunately, before he had time to use it, Leng Shiqi pointed out a finger. Starlight flashed, and the blood thunder star-shattering finger directly smashed the flying shuttle. Jidong suddenly felt desperate. Boom! With a loud noise, the giant lightning hand smashed Jidong's formation and smashed him into a pile of meat paste. Jidong, who had cultivated the power of wind and thunder for decades, finally died in the hands of the power of wind and thunder, which was a kind of irony. As for the two disciples of spiritual aperture realm he brought, they had already been killed by several inspectors. Guan Feihong and the others had been in a state of confusion. They had been enjoying a lot of resources these days, so their cultivation had improved by leaps and bounds. Guan Feihong and Qiu Cheng were both in spiritual aperture realm, and Xiao Qian was in the late stage of spiritual pulse realm. But Jidong, a master of Gang spirit realm, was still in existence that they had to look up to. Even Qin Jianchen, who had strong fighting capacity, could not get close to Jidong, which showed that Jidong was not weak. However, an expert of this level was killed by Leng Shiqi in less than 3 moves. Then, how strong was Leng Shiqi? After more than a year, Leng Shiqi's strength had completely exceeded their imagination. At this time, a person beside Leng Shiqi suddenly asked for orders. How dare the Wind and Thunder Tower offend your excellency? It is really audacious. Inspector Gao Ting of the 32 guards, please kill the Wind and Thunder Tower. Yi Feichen was secretly annoyed. In fact, he also thought that this was a good opportunity to show off, but his mouth was one step too slow. Leng Shiqi did not speak. He just waved his hand gently, as if he was driving away a fly beside him. Gao Ting was immediately overjoyed and hurriedly left with the 32 guards. Looking at Guan Feihong and the others who were still in a daze, Leng Shiqi could not help laughing. He was not as arrogant and domineering as when he killed a master of Gang spirit realm. What? Don't you want to let me in? Guan Feihong came to his senses and hurriedly led Leng Shiqi and the others in. Your Excellency, long time no see. You are finally back. I also have an important task this time. The Dark Thunder Guards in North County need to be mobilized. Later, you go and tell all the Dark Thunder Guards to gather in Hanzhou City, Leng Shiqi said as he walked. Yes, Your Excellency. Has anything happened in Dark Thunder Mansion during this time? The reason why Leng Shiqi did not go directly to West Wilderness City, but came to Hanzhou City first was that he wanted to see if everything was normal here. After all, half of the people here were killers of the blood-robed pavilion. After such a long time, he was afraid that someone would reveal some flaws. Guan Feihong thought for a moment and said, Your Excellency, although you haven't shown up for a long time, North County has been peaceful recently, and there has been no trouble. The only tricky thing is that there are no masters of Gang Spirit Realm in the Dark Thunder Guards in North County, so some things can't be done smoothly. Hearing this, Leng Shiqi knew that there was no accident, which made him feel a little relieved. He said, Don't worry, I will pay attention to this matter. While talking, they walked into the meeting hall. Leng Shiqi sat on the jade chair, and several masters of Gang Spirit Realm stood on both sides. However, Feng Shamo and Sulwan were not here. After they entered West Wilderness County, they went to the branch of the Blood-Robed Pavilion. Leng Shiqi's task relied heavily on intelligence, so he had to rely on the intelligence network of the Blood-Robed Pavilion. Gao Yi and Lian Yi were not his subordinates, but went directly to West Wilderness City. In fact, he came to Hanzhou City for a second purpose, which was also related to the task given to him by eunuch Gao. He asked Guan Feihong, How is the business of the families in those cities recently? The business he was talking about was smuggling. Under his tacit consent, dozens of families of various sizes were secretly transporting prohibited goods from the 6 countries of the western region to the Thunder Flame dynasty. Guan Feihong was well aware of this. He smiled and said, Don't worry, my lord. The business is going well. Right now, our Dark Thunder Manor has accumulated a large amount of resources. I was thinking of sending them to you in 2 days. Leng Shiqi narrowed his eyes and pondered, tapping his fingers on the jade chair. During this time, no one dared to disturb him. After a short while he said, "Very good. Send another message. Tell all the families in North County to come to Hanzhou City. Tell them that I want to invite everyone to a banquet." However, when Qiu Cheng, Qiao Qian, and the others heard the word banquet, they couldn't help but shudder. They remembered clearly that every time Leng Shiqi invited someone to a banquet, blood would be spilled. Although they couldn't guess what Leng Shiqi was going to do this time, they knew that people would die again. Chapter 619. The Western Wilderness Prefecture was not peaceful these days. The reason was that the second-rate sect, Wind and Thunder Tower, was destroyed by a group of mysterious experts at lightning speed. The Wind and Thunder Tower had attracted a lot of attention in the Western Wilderness Prefecture because of the last demon slaughtering conference. Although most people were laughing at it, it was undeniable that the Wind and Thunder Tower was a powerful second-rate sect. But such a sect had been completely slaughtered in half a day. Anyone who received this information was extremely shocked. It should be known that there were no top sects in the Western Desolate Province. There were only a few first-rate factions. However, these first-rate factions did not take action. Who had the ability to destroy the Wind Lightning Tower so easily? After many inquiries, people found out that the people who killed the Wind and Thunder Tower were from the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. And the news that Leng Shiqi killed Ji Dong at the gate of the Dark Thunder Guards was not kept a secret. Soon it was spread out. Combining the two things, people finally understood what was going on. Many people thought that the Wind and Thunder Tower was seeking death. They even dared to offend the Dark Thunder Guards. But more people were shocked by Leng Shiqi's identity and strength. In their impression, Leng Shiqi, the supervisor of the Northern Wilderness, was still at the middle stage of the spiritual aperture realm. When did he suddenly reach the Gang Spirit realm? And he killed Ji Dong with a flip of his hand. Even if he was at the late stage of the Gang Spirit realm, he might not be able to kill him so easily. In addition, some people judged Leng Shiqi's identity from his clothes. He was the supervisor of the headquarters of the Dark Thunder Guards. Although the major sects of the Western Wasteland province were far away from the Imperial City, and some would never go to the Imperial City in their entire lives, even if they had never eaten pork, they would still have seen pigs run. That eunuch envoy was an important figure, who was half a level higher than even a patrol envoy. Leng Shiqi came to the Western Wilderness Prefecture with such an identity. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was the king of darkness of the Western Wilderness Prefecture. But when did he become the supervisor of the Imperial Eunuch? Only then did some people start to inquire about Leng Shiqi. If they didn't inquire about him, they wouldn't have known. After doing so, they were shocked to find out that Leng Shiqi had such a stormy experience and had such a terrifying battle record. Now Leng Shiqi had returned to the West Baron Prefecture with so many Dark Lightning Guards. What was he planning to do? For a time, the various sects and forces began to panic. Only the 4 top sects in the Western Wilderness had guessed the purpose of Leng Shiqi's visit, which was to investigate the people who had come to celebrate the Emperor's birthday. These 4 sects also received invitations, but they could only send 2 people at most. When they knew that Leng Shiqi was coming, they immediately recalled all their disciples. All of them either sealed their mountains or went into seclusion, afraid that they would accidentally cause trouble. Not only would they lose the opportunity to meet the sage, but they would also cause endless trouble. Seeing that even the first-rate sects were acting like this, the other sects were even more jittery and cautious. The entire West Desolate County had actually fallen into an extremely rare tranquility, and this was what Leng Shiqi wanted to see. A few days later, Hanzhou City in the West Desolate Province became the most eye-catching place in the entire West Desolate Province. That was because all the Dark Lightning Guards and families in the North region were gathered there. When the Dark Lightning Guards learned that they finally had a backbone, they were naturally very happy. But those families were somewhat trembling with fear. Although they had a cooperative relationship with Leng Shiqi, they had made a fortune together and had made a lot of money over the years. They should have been happy. But Leng Shiqi was really notorious in the North region. In particular, he had easily killed Ji Dong and destroyed the Wind and Thunder Tower, which made Lung Shiqi's notoriety reach an unprecedented height. Back in the Mist City, he had set up a banquet to eliminate families one by one. Now that he set up another banquet, all the families thought it was a hangmen banquet. But they had to come, and no one dared to refuse. On this day, all the family heads walked into Jinhua Restaurant, the most luxurious restaurant in Hangzhou City. These people were all big shots, but they didn't even dare to breathe heavily in the restaurant. They all sat there in a daze. At noon, Lung Shiqi walked in surrounded by 5 masters of the Gang Spirit Realm, including Mr. Huang and Gao Ting. The 6 of them didn't release any spiritual power, but the momentum of the Gang Spirit Realm alone made everyone feel suffocated, as if even the air was frozen. Lung Shiqi looked around and found that there were 70 or 80 family heads present. It seemed that the business in the North region was getting bigger and bigger, which also meant that his family was getting richer and richer. "I'm very happy that you can come to the banquet," Lung Shiqi said with a smile. "In the past, I also set up a banquet and invited some families. Unfortunately, some of them are no longer here." Speaking of this, all the family heads felt a shadow in their hearts. Lung Shiqi saw that everyone was being honest and continued, "Actually, I've invited everyone here to discuss something." Speaking of this, he clapped his hands, and immediately hundreds of dark lightning guards came in and stood behind each family head. Everyone felt a chill on their backs, and some of them even trembled, and almost couldn't sit still. Since things were already like this, what was the point of having a discussion? Just do what you want. Don't worry. I know that you often go to the 6 countries of the Western region to do business, and inevitably encounter some dangers on the way. For your safety, I've decided to equip each family with several dark lightning guards to protect you. In this way, the business route will be smooth, and we will naturally earn more. What do you think? When the various family heads heard these words, their thoughts were stirred up. They believed that Lung Shiqi wanted to supervise each and every one of their families. If so, they would be under the surveillance of the dark lightning guards all the time, and completely lose all their freedom. But no one dared to refuse. Zhong Cheng, the head of the Zhong family in the Mist City, was the first to stand up and say, "Mr. Liu is right. For my lord to be so considerate of us, this lowly one is moved to tears. This lowly one thanks my lord again." With someone taking the lead, the others could only follow suit and say in unison, "We'll follow Mr. Liu's instructions." Lung Shiqi nodded with satisfaction. In fact, he didn't want to monitor these families because they were already under the surveillance of the Dark Lightning Guards. He actually wanted to use this method to have the Dark Lightning Guards hide in the caravan and sneak into the 6 countries of the Western region to gather information. This matter was done smoothly, so he turned and left. The family heads all breathed a sigh of relief and unknowingly broke out in a cold sweat. At the same time, in the Dark Lightning Manor in the Western Desolate Province, several people gathered in Yu Ruifeng's study. Now that Yu Ruifeng was at the late stage of unity of heaven and man realm, he didn't look as sharp as before and felt much more peaceful. Beside him were the other 3 great supervisors and his right-hand man Li Hong. They also knew about Lung Shiqi's actions after he came to the Western Desolate Province. Some people were envious of Lung Shiqi, because they had seen him enter the Dark Thunder Guards through the back door with their own eyes when he was only at the Spiritual Pulse realm. Now Lung Shiqi was an existence that they had to look up to no matter if it was his cultivation or his status. Some people were envious, but of course, there were also people who felt uncomfortable. That person was Duan Chun. He used to be Lung Shiqi's superior, and the 2 of them even had a conflict. Now that Lung Shiqi had achieved great success, would he come to take revenge on him? He sat on the chair and was a little restless, looking like he wanted to say something but hesitated. "Mr. Liu, I have something to say." Duan Chun held back for a long time and finally spoke. Yu Ruifeng said indifferently, "Say it." Duan Chun stood up and said, "Mr. Yu, we've worked together for many years and you know me well. I've always been straightforward. Even if Lu Xingji is an imperial eunuch and has the deep trust of Supervisor Gao, you are the patrol envoy of the Western Desolate Province. Furthermore, we are the ones in charge of investigating the identity of all the guests. But when Lu Xingji came to the Western Desolate Province, he didn't come to see you first. Instead, he went to Hangzhou City and acted like a tyrant. Now, his fame is great and all the sects in the western desolate province fear him. I'm afraid that people only know him as Lu Xingji and not you, Mr. Yu. Chapter 620. Duan Chun said a lot, but after he finished, the study was silent. No one spoke again. Duan Chun felt a little embarrassed. He looked at Yu Ruifeng and found that Yu Ruifeng's eyes were half closed as if he was about to fall asleep. Duan Chun didn't understand. He felt that what he said was true. Why did Yu Ruifeng have such a reaction? This was not the same Yu Ruifeng he knew before. Yu Ruifeng raised his eyelids. Finished? Duan Chun said subconsciously, yes, I'm finished. If you're finished, you can leave. I've been very busy recently. Yu Ruifeng ordered the guests to leave, and the three people in the room bowed and left. Coming to the courtyard, Duan Chun pulled Li Hong and said, Lord Li, what I said just now is true. Why didn't Lord Yu react at all? Li Hong sneered, Lord Duan, how long has it been since Lu Xingji joined the Dark Thunder Guard? You and I have both seen it, especially since he was once your subordinate. Now that he has soared to the sky, I can understand that Lord Duan is a little uncomfortable, but you forgot one thing. What is it? Li Hong leaned closer and said, Lu Xingji came with an extremely important mission. And it was Lord Yu who took the initiative to apply to headquarters to transfer people to help us. He even handed over the power to Lu Xingji. What does this mean? Lu Xingji can take your head with a word, but you still dare to slander him. I really don't know if you're bold or too straightforward. Duan Chun suddenly felt like he had fallen into an ice cellar. He was indeed unhappy when he saw his subordinate jump to become his immediate superior, which was why he said those words. Now it seemed that he was indeed a little inconsiderate. Just as they were walking outside, a Dark Thunder Guard ran to Yu Ruifeng's study and shouted, Lord Yu, there are two people outside the residence named Gao Yi and Lian Yi asking for an audience. And Yu Ruifeng's eyes suddenly widened. He waved his hand and blew open the door. Who did you say came outside the residence? The man repeated, It's Gao Yi and Lian Yi. Hearing these two names, Duan Chun and Li Hong were puzzled because they had never heard of these two people. But looking at Yu Ruifeng's expression, it was obvious that the two people's identities were not simple. It was no wonder that they didn't know that Gao Yi was Eunuch Gao's adopted son, and could be said to be the most outstanding adopted son. However, Eunuch Gao had quite a number of adopted sons. Furthermore, Gao Yi spent most of his time deep in the palace. Only the ministers who often went in and out of the palace would recognize him. It was impossible for the border inspectors like Duan Chun to recognize him. They had never even heard of him. As for Lian Yi, the people who knew of her identity were basically those in the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters and the inner city of the imperial capital, so it was even more impossible for them to know. Yu Ruifeng briefly explained the identities of these two people, causing Duan Chun and the others to turn pale with fright. Eunuch Gao's adopted son, Empyrean Black Flame's adopted daughter. What kind of noble status was this? It was an existence that they would never be able to reach in their entire lives. Yu Ruifeng hurriedly led several people out to welcome them. When they arrived at Dark Thunder Manor's entrance, Lian Yi was looking left and right. Gao Yi smiled and said, Lord Yu, it's an honor to meet you at last. Please come in, Eunuch Gao. Yu Ruifeng smiled as well. Gao Yi shook his head and said, I don't dare to accept the title of Eunuch Gao. Lord, you can just call me Gao Yi. Yu Ruifeng thought that it made sense. So as to avoid offending Steward Gao's name, he welcomed Gao Yi and Lian Yi into the discussion hall and asked, Eunuch Gao Yi and Miss Lian Yi have come all the way to the Western Desolate Commandery. I wonder what honorable business you have. Gao Yi looked at Lian Yi and found that she had no intention of speaking. Only then did Gao Yi open his mouth and say, We are actually here to assist Lord Lu Xingji. When these words came out, everyone in the hall was shocked. With the identities of these two people, they were actually only Lu Xingji's assistants? That Lu Xingji already had such a high status. The others were only shocked, but Duan Chun also had a trace of fear in his heart. He was already rejoicing that Yu Ruifeng did not pay attention to his words. Gao Yi looked at everyone's expression and secretly smiled. However, he did not expose them. Instead, he changed the topic and said, Lord Lu has already arrived in Hangzhou City. I'm sure everyone already knows. He said that he will be here soon to discuss with all of you how to arrange and monitor the various countries' diplomatic missions. Yu Ruifeng said, regarding this matter, we are already working on it. We have already obtained the names of the various countries' diplomatic missions, and are preparing to investigate them one by one. However, my Dark Lightning Guards also have to monitor the West Desolate Province at the same time, so we are a little short on manpower. I wonder when Lord Lu will be here? Suddenly, a voice came from outside. I'm already here. Everyone looked over at the same time. Unknowingly, a figure was already standing outside the discussion hall. It was Leng Shiqi. Everyone looked at Leng Shiqi in shock. He was clearly in Hangzhou City yesterday, so how did he come to the West Desolate City now? Could it be that he could grow a pair of wings and fly over? In fact, Leng Shiqi really did fly over. Hangzhou City was less than 1,000 miles away from the West Desolate City. He used the fate skill to teleport over and followed Lian Yi and the others to the West Desolate City. The moment Leng Shiqi arrived, Yu Ruifeng's face was instantly filled with joy. Lord Lu, you're finally here. Lord Yu, this junior doesn't deserve the title of Lord. Leng Shiqi immediately said humbly. You are now the eunuch envoy, so you are definitely worthy of the title. Let's not talk about this anymore, come in and take a seat. Yu Ruifeng was very enthusiastic. After all, Leng Shiqi had saved his life before. Leng Shiqi sat beside Yu Ruifeng and said, Lord Yu, I heard that you have obtained the names of the various countries' diplomatic missions? That's right, it's here. Take a look. Yu Ruifeng took out a report. Leng Shiqi opened it and looked at the Zhulugua. Shortly after, his eyes were filled with shock because the Zhulugua's King Gus was actually going to personally celebrate Lei Qingjuan's birthday. But thinking about it, King Gus had only ascended the throne for a short period of time. Moreover, he had some conflicts with the Thunderfire dynasty. Leng Shiqi guessed that King Gus wanted to use this birthday celebration to hug the thighs of the Thunderfire dynasty and stabilize his position on the throne. Leng Shiqi inwardly said, since Gus is going to personally come to the Thunderfire dynasty, then the Zhulugua will be like a dragon without a head. This might be an opportunity for me. Back then, when he was in the Zhulugua, Leng Shiqi had also left behind a few backup plans for the future. Now that Leng Shiqi's strength and influence were incomparable to the past, it was time for him to start making arrangements for that matter. He immediately said, although the 6 countries of the West regions are small countries, we cannot let down our guard. I have already used some of my family's channels to arrange for people to infiltrate the various countries, but even so, I am still somewhat worried. Therefore, I have decided to personally make a trip. Chapter 621. Yu Ruifeng frowned. You want to go to the 6 Western countries? Yes. Leng Shiqi nodded. Instead of waiting for those envoys to enter the country, it's better to take the initiative. To be honest, I have a secret technique that allows me to travel hundreds of miles in a day. The 6 Western countries aren't large, and they plan to enter the country in 2 or 3 months. With this time, I can go to all the 6 Western countries. At that time, I'll need Lord Yu to preside over the situation in the Western Desolate Province. Yu Ruifeng also hesitated. Leng Shiqi was supposed to be in charge of this mission, but Leng Shiqi had to investigate the background of the members of the diplomatic mission by himself. Not only would he be extremely tired from running back and forth between the 6 countries of the Western region, but he would also be in great danger. After all, not everyone in the 6 Western countries had a good relationship with the Thunderstorm dynasty. If Leng Shiqi's identity was exposed, he might really be left there. If Leng Shiqi really had an accident, how would Yu Ruifeng explain it to Eunuch Gao? Leng Shiqi smiled. Lord Yu, don't worry. I cherish my life very much. I'm just going to scout for information. I won't do anything too dangerous. When he saw Leng Shiqi being so certain, Yu Ruifeng could only agree. Since it's like this, I'll have to trouble Lord Lu. But I must hold a grand banquet tonight to welcome Lord Lu, Eunuch Gao Yi, and Miss Lian Yi. The next day, Leng Shiqi left the Western Desolate Province alone and headed for the Zhulu country. With his speed, it only took him 3 or 4 days to reach the Zhulu country. At this moment, he was standing at the foot of a mountain, holding a piece of information in his hand and reading it with great interest. Before coming to the Zulu country, he had obtained some information from the Dark Thunder Guards and the Blood Garment Pavilion. He was currently reading about a new power in the Zulu country in recent years, the Buddhist sect. The Buddhist sect was a very special power because it didn't focus on cultivating the cultivation of its disciples. Instead, it preached Buddhist scriptures. There was a reason why it was still called a power. Zulu country wasn't rich to begin with. Adding on the fact that many people had died during the transfer of the throne 2 years ago, the people were in a state of panic. This made the situation even more difficult. Coincidentally, the Buddhist sect appeared at this time. The disciples of the Buddhist sect were all as benevolent and charitable as Lung Shichi remembered them to be. Very quickly, they gained quite a bit of fame in the Zulu country. Moreover, Buddhist sects didn't have any requirements for talent when accepting disciples. As long as one had good intentions, they could join. Gradually, they attracted more and more people. Of course, most of them were poor people. However, there were also many spirit cultivators who would take the initiative to join, ranging from the spirit astral realm to the spirit gathering realm, so it could be considered a force. Along the way, Lung Shichi occasionally saw a few Buddhists. Most of them were not different from the impression he had in his previous life. He even felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. And the founder of this Buddhist sect was Tuding. Actually, Lung Shichi was also quite surprised. When he gave the Buddhist scriptures to Tuding, it was just a casual act. He never thought that Tuding would be able to reappear in this world. The reason why he came here was because of the 3 favors that Tuding owed him. If Lung Shichi wanted to complete his plan in Zulu country, Tuding's strength was indispensable. Especially now that Buddhism had appeared, Tuding wasn't just a powerful force, he also had a lot of people's hearts. This was extremely important to his future plans. Senior Tuding has truly given me a pleasant surprise. Lung Shichi muttered, then walked up the mountain peak. On the mountain path, there were a few monks and pilgrims who came to offer incense. The people here were not small. However, most of these people were thin and sallow. It was obvious that their days weren't good. When he reached the peak, he saw an irregular temple. As soon as he appeared, a loud Buddhist chant came from the temple. Umitba, a kind person has come from afar. This old monk has failed to welcome you. In an instant, the entire temple was covered in a layer of faint Buddhist light. All of the Buddhist disciples and pilgrims immediately knelt on the ground and chanted. Tuding wore a kasaya and walked out with a face full of glory. Little friend Lu, long time no see. Lung Shichi looked at the current Tuding and felt a trace of absent-mindedness. It was as if he saw a Buddhist light behind Tuding's head that was like a sun. What made him feel even more strange was that Tuding's aura was very strange. Lung Shichi had interacted with many Heaven Man Realm and Heaven Origin Realm experts. However, Tuding's aura seemed to be above Heaven Man Realm, but it wasn't Heaven Origin Realm. Then what was Tuding's cultivation level? However, Lung Shichi wouldn't ask about someone's cultivation level. He cupped his hands and said, Senior Tuding, it has indeed been a long time. Umitba, this old monk is no longer a person of the secular world. Senior or not, it doesn't matter. Senior's transcendence is admirable. Seeing that you created the Buddhist sect to help the world. Why don't I call you Master Buddha Tuding? Lung Shichi said with a smile. This old monk doesn't dare. Lung Shichi shook his head and said, Since you have transcended the world, why do you care about a title? Tuding was stunned for a moment, then he laughed. Haha, this old monk has been thinking too much. Little friend, you are right. Little friend, please come in. After the two of them sat down, Tuding said with emotion. The Buddhist scriptures that little friend left behind can be said to be the world's most precious treasure. It contains the highest Buddhist principles. The more this old monk studies it, the more I feel like a frog at the bottom of a well. Every Buddhist scripture is like a boundless world. I'm afraid this old monk won't be able to study it thoroughly even if he studies it for his entire life. Actually, Lung Shichi had also read those Buddhist scriptures, but they were simply heavenly scrolls. He couldn't understand anything. He also didn't know how Tuding could see such profound things. Of course, he still followed his memories from his previous life and started to chat with Tuding. Occasionally, the golden sentences that came out would make Tuding sigh. Until night time, when Lung Shiqi's stomach was completely drained of ink, he finally explained his purpose for coming. Master Tuding, this junior actually came this time to ask for a favor. Tuding revealed an as expected smile and said, little friend came from the western desolate province. Naturally, you have an important matter. Little friend, please speak. Lung Shiqi pondered for a moment, then first asked, may I ask what Master Tuding's current cultivation level is? Speaking of this, Tuding also had a somewhat doubtful expression. According to the system of spirit cultivation, this old monk has been studying Buddhism for the past 2 years, and has comprehended many cultivation methods and spirit techniques. I'm even able to communicate with the power of heaven and earth. Normally speaking, this is already considered the sky origin stage. However, this old monk's spirit energy hasn't transformed into the power of heaven and earth, so I can only be considered half a step into the sky origin stage. This is also something this old monk has been very doubtful about. Chapter 622. After hearing Tuding's words, Lung Shiqi didn't know what to say. What did he mean by comprehending a lot of martial arts and spiritual techniques? What did he mean by communicating with the power of heaven and earth? He made it sound as if it was as simple as eating and drinking. Fortunately, Lung Shiqi could confirm that Tuding's current strength was definitely above the unity of heaven realm. With such a powerful combat force to use, his plan had a higher chance of succeeding. However, what made Lung Shiqi even more curious was what kind of spiritual technique Tuding had comprehended. One had to know that Tuding had comprehended it from those Buddhist scriptures, so it was definitely related to Buddhism. To be honest, Lung Shiqi was a little tempted. He asked curiously, Master Tuding, if this junior is so bold, I wonder what kind of spiritual technique you have comprehended from those Buddhist scriptures? Tuding didn't say anything. He clasped his hands together, and his body shone with a blazing Buddhist aura. Boundless Vajra power surged over. At the same time, Tuding's body was dyed with a layer of dazzling gold, as if he was a Vajra Buddha. Vajra, indestructible divine art. Lung Shiqi couldn't help but exclaim. Oh, Tuding was slightly surprised. This old monk didn't name this technique after comprehending it. Little friend's Vajra, indestructible divine art is indeed very appropriate. Lung Shiqi couldn't help but admire Tuding. He was actually able to create a powerful technique like Vajra, indestructible divine art from those seemingly ordinary scriptures. This was a divine art that was known as the strongest in defense. It allowed one to transform into a Vajra body that was impervious to weapons, water, and fire. It was invincible in close combat. However, Tuding used his palm as a saber and released a saber beam. Strangely, this saber beam didn't have any killing intent. It even gave off a very warm feeling. It was as if this saber technique wasn't created to kill people. A name suddenly appeared in Lung Shiqi's mind, Merciful Saber Technique. Tuding successively used the Buddhist divine arts from his previous life, the Great Steel Breaking Hand, the Vajra Finger, the 12 Dragon Capturing Hands. Lung Shiqi couldn't take it all in. He was even more shocked. In the end, Tuding struck out with his palm. Lung Shiqi actually heard boundless Sanskrit chants ringing in his ears. When he looked up, he didn't know when the 8 divine Buddhas had appeared in the world. A huge palm illuminated by Buddha's aura slowly descended, as if it was going to subdue demons and devils, fully displaying the might of the divine Buddhas. Lung Shiqi opened his mouth and murmured, This can't be the Buddha's palm, right? Tuding's palm didn't land. He stopped halfway, and the golden light that filled the sky suddenly disappeared. His control over his strength had already reached a perfect state. This palm technique doesn't only have one move, but a set. It can be said to be broad and profound. It's a pity that this old monk's perception is limited. So far, I've only comprehended 6 moves. Tuding said with a vexed voice. Lung Shiqi really wanted to find a piece of tofu and kill himself. He originally thought that his perception was already very high. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to fuse so many divine arts and spiritual skills. But compared to Tuding, it was simply a small fry. This person could casually create all kinds of mystical divine arts. Even the goo arts that were famous in the 6 kingdoms of the western regions were created by him. Now he had actually created so many powerful spiritual techniques from those scriptures. The weakest spiritual skill that Tu Deng used just now was at the 6th level. Even the Vajrabhati divine art and the Buddha's palm had already reached the 7th level, or even higher. Although these divine arts and spiritual skills were slightly different from what Leng Shiqi remembered from his previous life, they were more than 80% similar. Leng Shiqi really felt that it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call Tu Deng a living Buddha. Tu Deng withdrew his Buddhist power and said, "Since little friend asked about this old monk's cultivation and spiritual skills, you must have a use for this old monk. Little friend, please feel free to ask." Leng Shiqi pondered for a moment and took out an emerald green pearl. This was one of the 3 pearls that Tu Deng gave him. As long as he took out this pearl, Tu Deng would do 3 things for Leng Shiqi. This junior wants to ask Great Master Tu Deng to pass these divine arts and spiritual skills to this junior. Leng Shiqi stated his request. What surprised him was that Tu Deng shook his head. "You're too polite, little friend. These techniques were all comprehended from your scriptures. They belong to you in the first place, so it's only right for me to pass them to you." Leng Shiqi smiled but did not say anything. He directly crushed the emerald green pearl and said, "These things are too precious. This junior cannot take them for free. You fine little friend Lu is indeed a sentimental person. This old monk admires you." Tu Deng took out a jade slip as he spoke. This contains all the divine arts and spiritual skills that this old monk has comprehended in the past few years. Little friend Lu, keep it well. Phew. Leng Shiqi took the jade slip. His breathing could not help but become heavy. The things inside were enough to make many spirit cultivators fight to the death. Especially the Vajra unbreakable divine art and Buddha's palm. They could directly increase Leng Shiqi's strength. Furthermore, the Buddhist divine arts could suppress demons and devils. They were the nemesis of all demons and ghosts. Adding on the pure gold earth dragon flames on his body, if he met a devil cultivator in the future, it would be a powerful weapon. Following that, Leng Shiqi took out a second pearl and said, "This junior has a presumptuous request. I would like to invite Grandmaster to join my faction." Tu Deng frowned when he heard that. It's not that this old monk does not want to agree. It's just that this old monk has no other thoughts. "I only want to do my best to help others. I don't want to be involved with any other factions." Leng Shiqi smiled and said, "Grandmaster, please let this junior finish. Although my faction is called a faction, it is actually just a loose organization. To tell you the truth, there are only 2 people in the faction. This junior can guarantee that it will not cause any trouble for Grandmaster." Tu Deng hesitated for a moment, then nodded and said, "That's fine. This old monk agrees." Hearing that, Leng Shiqi's face lit up. To be able to rope in a great expert like Tu Deng, who was also a great expert with superb comprehension, this was too profitable for him. At the same time, a system notification appeared in front of his eyes. "Do you want to invite Tu Deng to join Underworld?" "Yes." Soon after, a mark entered Tu Deng's body. Leng Shiqi observed with rapt attention, but Tu Deng did not notice it at all. At this moment, Leng Shiqi suddenly had a thought. He wanted to bring Tu Deng into Underworld to take a look. Since Tu Deng was already a member of Underworld, he would have to go in sooner or later. He said, "Grandmaster Tu Deng, since you are already a member of a faction, this junior can make some things clear. My faction is called Underworld. Not long ago, this junior obtained a secret realm as the foundation of my faction. I wonder if Grandmaster is willing to go in and take a look?" "Secret realm?" Tu Deng was very surprised. "Young friend, you actually obtained a secret realm. You are truly blessed. Grandmaster, don't resist." After saying that, Leng Shiqi placed his hand on Tu Deng's shoulder. With a thought, he brought Tu Deng into Underworld. Chapter 623. The moment Tu Deng entered the Underworld and saw the scene, his expression changed. This place is the land of extreme negative energy, the land of extreme evil, the land of great evil. However, there seems to be a trace of faintly discernible vitality in the deepest part of the cave. It's really strange. This junior was also extremely shocked when he obtained this mystic realm. Grandmaster, please follow me, Lung Shiqi said as he led Tuding to the gates of hell. Tuding looked at the words gates of hell and frowned deeply, but he didn't say anything. However, when they walked through the Yellow Springs Road and stepped onto the Bridge of Helplessness, Tuding suddenly exclaimed when he saw more than 1,000 souls. Are these human souls? Before Lung Shiqi could explain, a ghostly figure flashed and 2 pitch-black chains lashed out like whips. Lung Shiqi immediately shouted, "Li Gue, back down." The ghostly figure suddenly paused and bowed deeply to Lung Shiqi before retreating. Tuding looked at all of this in a daze, especially that Li Gue. He actually couldn't tell what Li Gue was. It was neither human nor ghost. It seemed to be alive but also lifeless. Lung Shiqi explained half-truthfully, "Grandmaster, this junior discovered that as long as someone dies near me, their soul will be sucked into this place. However, I don't know why. The person just now was an anomaly among these souls. I have already subdued him." This is the first time this old monk has seen something so strange in this mystic realm. However, when I saw these souls staying here in a daze, this old monk felt uneasy. According to what this junior knows, there are many soul-purifying techniques in Buddhist scriptures. I believe Grandmaster will figure it out sooner or later. When that happens, the souls in the underworld will be reborn, said Lung Shiqi. Tuding said in realization, That's right. This old monk has some impression of it, but this old monk has never thought in this direction. It turns out that not only do living people need to be purified, but the souls of dead people also need to be purified. Amitba, this is this old monk's sin. He put his palms together and chanted the name of Buddha. Suddenly, a golden light soared into the sky from the mysterious Fengdu necropolis. It was very eye-catching in the dark underworld. Lung Shiqi and Tu Deng looked over at the same time. They both felt a familiar aura from it. It was also an aura that should not exist here. Buddhist power. Just as the two of them were confused, the golden light arrived in the blink of an eye, bathing Tu Deng in it. At the same time, the sky above the underworld trembled, and a mysterious voice seemed to come from the underworld. Conferred, Xidigarba. Xidigarba. Lung Shiqi was shocked. Or rather, he was pleasantly surprised. He didn't have any other intentions when he brought Tu into the underworld, but he didn't expect that he would be able to trigger the mysterious Fengdu necropolis and obtain the title of Xidigarba, calm and unmoving like the earth, quiet and deep like a hide-and-seek. Xidigarba Bodhisattva was a figure with a transcendent status in the underworld. He had made a vow that he would not become a Buddha until hell was empty. He had vividly displayed the great compassion and perseverance of Buddhism. From Lung Shiqi's point of view, Tuding did indeed have such an attitude. Buzz. A statue of Xidigarba Bodhisattva stood majestically, almost filling the entire space of the underworld. Then it suddenly shrank and was sucked into Tu Deng's body. Tu Deng's body was emitting a faint Buddhist light. There was no sorrow or joy in his eyes. He had no thoughts of life. After a long while, he gradually returned to normal. He was also a little dazed, as if he had a slight headache. What happened just now? Why is there so much information in my mind? Lung Shiqi's mouth twitched slightly. When he entered the underworld for the first time, he had clearly become the Fengdu necropolis emperor of the Bain, but why didn't he have such an earth-shattering phenomenon? He even began to wonder if he was the master of the underworld. He could only say, "This junior is also not very clear. Perhaps there is some mysterious inheritance in this arcane realm. It seems that Master Tu Deng is the one with great fortune. This junior congratulates you. To be able to encounter such a great fortuitous encounter at my age, but this is all thanks to little friend Lu." Tu Deng bowed slightly to Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi hurriedly supported Tu Deng and said, "Master Tu Deng is too serious. I see that Master's condition is not very good. Let's go back first." All right. The two of them left the underworld. Lung Shiqi continued, "Master, this junior actually planned to ask for Master's help this time, but not now. It's fine. When little friend Lu needs help, you can come here at any time. If that's the case, this junior will thank you in advance. Master, please rest. This junior will take his leave." Lung Shiqi's main purpose of coming here was to confirm if Tu Deng was here, and what his cultivation realm was like. He obtained some Buddhist cultivation techniques and invited Tu Deng into the underworld on the spur of the moment. However, they had given him many unexpected surprises. Since the matter was settled, it was time for him to leave. Even though he was very curious about what Tu Deng obtained, he still had many important things to do. He really could not wait. After bidding farewell to Tu Deng, Leng Shiqi quickly arrived at a deep valley filled with poisonous gas. There was a new faction that had emerged in the past 2 years, Myriad Gu Cave. This was also a faction that focused on cultivating Gu techniques. It was not very strong, but it was still stronger than ordinary third-rate sections. In Zhu Road, although the Gu God sect had been destroyed long ago, the Gu God sect had taken root in Zhu Road for decades. It was once regarded as the national religion, and Gu techniques had long been spread everywhere. Therefore, even if the Gu God sect was gone, Gu techniques were still relatively popular. The appearance of Myriad Gu Cave did not attract much attention. The sect master of Myriad Gu Cave was called Madame Myriad Gu. She was an extremely vicious woman. She was somewhat famous in the surrounding 50 kilometers. Leng Shiqi used his supercilious eyes to see through the poisonous gas. He discovered that there were several hundred people in Myriad Gu Cave. Among them, more than 80% were low-level disciples below the Sky Realm. There were only a dozen Spirit Pulse Realm cultivators. As for the Spirit Aperture Realm, there were only 2. One of them was at the Spirit Aperture Realm initial stage, while the other was at the Spirit Aperture Realm late stage. This person cultivated the Myriad Gu Spirit Devouring technique. Then this person's identity was clear. She was the former Princess Ka Luo. Leng Shiqi muttered to himself, I didn't think that the naive Princess Ka Luo would actually create a decent sect. It seems that the power of revenge is indeed very strong. In a sealed secret room in Myriad Gu Cave, Princess Ka Luo, who was disguised as a woman, was cultivating Gu techniques. The entire secret room was filled with all kinds of Gu worms. But all of a sudden, all of the Gu worms scattered as if they had encountered heaven and earth. Princess Ka Luo suddenly opened her eyes. She was startled at first, but immediately calmed down. She said in a low voice, Which expert has come to visit? Please show yourself. A figure strangely appeared beside her and said faintly, Long time no see. Princess Ka Luo, do you still remember me? Chapter 624. Hearing this familiar voice, Princess Carol whispered in disbelief, It's you? Leng Shiqi did not disguise himself as Zhuo Qiuyu this time. Instead, he came in with his original appearance, so Princess Carol did not dare to confirm it immediately. Yes, it's me. This is my original appearance. Leng Shiqi said indifferently. For the current Leng Shiqi, there was no need to hide his identity in front of some people. On the contrary, it would be easier to get things done by directly revealing his identity. Princess Carol also noticed that Leng Shiqi was wearing the Dark Thunder Guard's uniform. She asked in surprise, You're from the Dark Thunder Guard? Leng Shiqi nodded and said, Dark Thunder Guard Headquarters Eunuch Leng Shiqi, as well as the West and North Desolation Prefecture's Great Supervisor, greets Princess Carol. Princess Carol had stayed in the Thunderblaze dynasty for a period of time. She knew the identity of the Great Supervisor. He was also a supervisor. Although she had never heard of any eunuch, as long as he was related to the Dark Thunder Guard headquarters, he was definitely not an ordinary person. She had also guessed Leng Shiqi's true identity. She thought that he would be from the Starfall dynasty, but she never dreamed that the person secretly helping her would be a member of the Thunderblaze dynasty's Dark Thunder Guard. So you're Lu Xingji. Now that she thought about it, everything this person said back then was simply a lie. Leng Shiqi saw that Princess Carol was unhappy and immediately said with a smile, Princess Carol, please don't blame me. Back then, my cultivation was low and my words carried little weight. I had to be careful. Now that I've come to see you with my true identity, it's my greatest sincerity. Enough. If you have something to say, just say it. Princess Carol had matured a lot in the past 2 years. However, she knew that she could not outsmart Leng Shiqi, so she simply spoke frankly. Leng Shiqi asked back, I want to ask your highness first. Do you still want to take back the throne of Zhu Lu and avenge the late king and queen? Princess Carol immediately gritted her teeth and said, "Of course I do. I even dream of it. Do you know how I spent the past 2 years? Your Highness, this is only a temporary forbearance. I came this time to tell you that the strength we have accumulated is not weak," Lung Shiqi said, but he immediately changed the topic. "But it's still not enough to take down Gus. In fact, when Lung Shiqi destroyed the Gu God sect and accidentally found Princess Carol, he had a crazy idea in his heart, and that was to enter the Zhu Lu kingdom. This idea seemed absurd, but it had always been Lung Shiqi's plan. First of all, he persuaded Princess Carol to come. He had a good reason to do so. That way, the Sky Origin Stage cultivators in the Zhu Lu country's Hall of Worship wouldn't be alerted. Although the current Myriad Gu Cave's strength was mediocre, Lung Shiqi had Princess Carol nurture her own faction not because he expected her to provide much fighting power. Instead, he wanted Lung Shiqi's own people to hide in 10,000 Gu Cave. Even if the experts in the Hall of Consecration would not interfere, Prince Gus had a large number of troops, and it was unrealistic for him to attack the palace directly. Therefore, there must be a spy. That spy was Elder Chuli. According to Lung Shiqi's information, Chuli had been under house arrest after Gus ascended to the throne. In the past 2 years, he had been trying to weaken Chuli's influence. However, Chuli had been an elder for decades. He had too many disciples. Even if Prince Gus kept weakening him, he still had a lot of power. More importantly, Sang Hutong had planted a mind-controlling Gu in Chuli. Now, the control of the mind-controlling Gu had fallen into Lung Shiqi's hands. This meant that Lung Shiqi could completely control Chuli. As long as he controlled Chuli and cooperated with him at the right time, it was very likely that a large number of experts would be quietly sent into Yunwu City, and they could start a war at any time. Moreover, Chuli was highly respected. As long as he stood out to support Princess Carol, there would be no more objections. Then the matter would be settled. However, Lung Shiqi said to Princess Carol that he still needed a little more. The only thing he lacked was strength. He didn't worry about the top fighting power. With Tooting's strength, he could definitely kill Gus. What he lacked most now was the backbone of Gang Spirit Realm. As an inspector, he had several Gang Spirit Realm experts in his hands. However, he couldn't take those inspectors to plot against Zhu Lu State, so he couldn't use the Dark Thunder Guards. In Lung Shiqi's original plan, he was going to use the people of the Blood-Robed Pavilion, but now he didn't think so. The Blood-Robed Pavilion wanted to break the shackles of thousands of years, and didn't want to be controlled by others, so he came up with the Blood Seed Plan. Lung Shiqi was also working hard to carry out the Blood Seed Plan, but in the process, with the growth of his strength and influence, he gradually had his own ideas. If the Blood Seed Plan failed or was exposed in advance in the future, he had to pave a way for himself. Therefore, he couldn't use the people of the Blood-Robed Pavilion. In this way, he could only use the Mansion of the Underworld. There were only 3 members of the Mansion of the Underworld now, but both he and the Delta Origi were far more powerful than their cultivation realms. Besides, he was not in a hurry to take over Zhu Lu State. After a period of growth, he believed that the strength of him and the Delta Origi would grow rapidly, and he would also continue to recruit some members of the Mansion of the Underworld. Perhaps one day in the future, the Mansion of the Underworld would also become a top force that would scare people. This was Lung Shiqi's plan. However, when Princess Carol heard Lung Shiqi say that it was almost done, her face suddenly turned cold and she said, "Then what you said is the same as not saying anything?" Lung Shiqi did not directly answer Princess Carol. Instead, he took out a ring and a jade slip. Princess Carol's gaze fell on the ring with a skull. Her eyes suddenly widened and she said, This is the Divine Gu Ring? It is a level 7 treasure, the Divine Gu Ring. Lung Shiqi said bluntly, "From now on it is yours." "What did you say?" Princess Carol's face was full of disbelief. This was a level 7 treasure, and it was the most precious treasure of the Gu God sect. It could be said that it was a treasure that all cultivators of the Gu God sect dreamed of. How could such a treasure be given away so casually? In fact, Lung Shiqi gave the Divine Gu Ring to Princess Carol because of this reason. Ever since he obtained the Divine Gu Ring, he had only used it a few times. That was because his Gu arts were not very good. As for the Divine Gu Ring's ability to amplify spells, It had little effect on Lung Shiqi, who had opened all his spirit veins and spirit cavities. This treasure was of little value to him. It was better to give it to Princess Carol, who was proficient in Gu techniques, to make the best use of it. Lung Shiqi looked at the surprised Princess Carol and said indifferently, "Your Highness, why don't you take a look at the jade slip?" Chapter 625. Princess Carol still hadn't recovered from the shock of the divine Gu ring. After hearing this, she subconsciously picked up the jade slip and probed it with her spiritual power. Inside it was the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. She suddenly felt a wave of dizziness in her mind, and she even began to wonder if she was dreaming. Lung Shiqi had given Princess Carol a part of Sang Hutong's Gu refining experience, and she had used it as the foundation to cultivate a large number of rare Gu worms, which attracted many spirit cultivators to join the 10,000 Gu cave. Unfortunately, Princess Carol was somewhat lacking in cultivation methods because she only had the first half of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique, which was only enough for her to cultivate to the peak of the spirit aperture realm. Now that she was at the late stage of the spirit aperture realm, she had been worrying about cultivation methods recently. Lung Shiqi's complete version of the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique could be said to be timely rain. Moreover, the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique was an 8th rank cultivation method, especially for those who cultivated Gu. Even if someone exchanged it with a 9th rank cultivation method, she wouldn't be willing. Princess Carol's eyes were almost overflowing with light. It was obvious that she wanted it very much. Lung Shiqi also secretly smiled. Whether it was the divine Gu ring or the 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique, they were too attractive to those who cultivated Gu. He said, "Both of these things can be given to your Highness, which will help your cultivation greatly and increase your chances of success in the future." However, Princess Carol took a deep breath. She turned her head away from the Gu God Ring's 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique. She was suppressing the greed in her heart. "Tell me, what do you want?" She didn't believe that there was such a good thing in the world, especially when it came to the person in front of her. She was sure that there was a trap. "Princess Carol, you worry too much. Do you remember what I said just now? What we lack the most now is the battle strength of the spirit astral realm. I believe that with the complete 10,000 Gu spirit devouring technique and the divine Gu ring, your Highness will be able to break through to the spirit astral realm soon. This is good for both you and me," Lung Shiqi said very generously. Princess Carol sneered. "Nice words, but I won't believe a single word. Just tell me the truth." Lung Shiqi was slightly stunned. Everything he said was true. Why did Princess Carol have such a reaction? Could it be that no one believed the truth these days? Actually, he could only blame himself for this. He had once caused Princess Carol quite a bit of trouble. As the saying went, a fall into the pit, a gain in one's wit. This Princess Carol was no fool. Lung Shiqi thought quickly and said, "Sure enough, I can't hide anything from your Highness. I said that when your Highness took back the throne, you would join my force. Now, I am willing to use the divine poison ring and the 10,000 poisonous spirit devouring technique to let your Highness join in advance." Hearing Lung Shiqi's conditions, Princess Carol's expression showed that she had expected it. Lung Shiqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He continued, "My faction doesn't have any powerful restraints. You are still you. It's just that matter is getting closer and closer. It's necessary for us to establish the necessary trust, isn't it?" Princess Carol suddenly showed hesitation. Lung Shiqi was not in a hurry. He stood by the side and waited slowly. Finally, Princess Carol looked at the divine poison ring and the 10,000 poisonous spirit devouring technique. She gritted her teeth and said, "I agree." Lung Shiqi looked at the system notification before him. The first condition for Underworld's upgrade had been completed. Lung Shiqi said, "Very good." "Ha. That's it," Princess Carol said with some astonishment. "Princess Carol, what else do you want? Shouldn't there be some kind of ceremony or token or something?" Speaking of this, Lung Shiqi had never thought about it. After all, he had the system. As long as he agreed to let others join the underworld, it would be fine. Therefore, he really didn't have any identity token or anything like that. This would lead to the members of the underworld not knowing that the other party was one of them even if they met face to face. However, Leng Shiqi thought about it and felt that this might not be a bad thing. It would be good for the members of the underworld to keep their identities a secret. In this way, no one in this world except him would know the true identity of all the members of the underworld. This would also ensure the secrecy of the underworld to the greatest extent. Thinking of this, Leng Shiqi said, "Our faction is called the Underworld. It's a relatively free force. Or rather, it's more appropriate to call it an organization. All members of the underworld will keep their identities a secret. We're just taking what we need, that's all." However, Leng Shiqi had no intention of bringing Princess Carol into the underworld because he couldn't trust her too much yet. Although he could decide Princess Carol's life and death at any time, he couldn't guarantee that she wouldn't spread the news about the underworld. This was the difference between her and Delta Origi and Tuden. This underworld is very special. Princess Carol originally thought that she would be tied to a pirate ship from now on, but now it seemed that she was thinking too much. Leng Shiqi pushed the Goo God ring and Goo God devouring technique forward and said, "Now, Your Highness, can you accept these items?" This time, Princess Carol didn't refuse. She took the 2 items and put them away like they were priceless treasures. She said, "I won't take these items for free. I will do my best to cultivate and nurture my faction. At the same time, I will also secretly contact my original clan relatives and more or less win over some people's support. I won't drag you down." "That's good. We can put this matter aside for now. Your Highness, please help me take a look at this list." Leng Shiqi said and took out a name card. It recorded the name list of the Zhulu Kingdom's envoy group that was going to the Thunderfire Dynasty's birthday celebration. There were about 40 to 50 people. Princess Carol opened it and saw some familiar names. She asked in confusion, "What's wrong with these people?" To be honest, the Thunderfire Dynasty's emperor will be holding his 70th birthday half a year later. These are the people who will be going. Your Highness, please take a look and see if there's anyone with an unclean background. Leng Shiqi didn't hide anything. This matter would spread in Zhulu Kingdom in the near future. Princess Carol had been a princess for a long time, and should be quite familiar with the officials. Letting her take a look would be more useful than having a group of Dark Thunder Guards investigate for a few months. She carefully looked again. Every time she saw a name, she would more or less pause as if she was recalling something. After an hour, she said, "Most of the people here are still important officials from before. There's no problem. There are also a few that I don't recognize. They should be Gus' new confidants. From what I know, Gus really wants to climb up to the Thunderfire Dynasty. I don't think he would dare to do anything." Leng Shiqi thought so too. Zhulu Kingdom and Beilu Kingdom were both vassals of the Thunderfire Dynasty. They wouldn't do anything. The focus was on the other 4 small kingdoms, especially the Golden Tribe Kingdom and Tuoba Kingdom that were close to the Starfall Dynasty. "Since that's the case, I'll be leaving." Leng Shiqi was about to leave when he suddenly turned around and asked, "Oh right, who is the person that Gus values the most in the Zhulu Kingdom?" Princess Carol raised her brows and asked, "What do you want to do?" Leng Shiqi shrugged and said, "Since I'm already here, I can't just come here for nothing. I'll weaken Gus's power a little." Princess Carol seemed to have guessed what Leng Shiqi wanted to do. She took a deep breath and said 2 names. Chapter 626. Leng Shiqi came to the Zhu Road Kingdom's imperial city again after 2 years. 2 years ago, he came with Yu Ruifeng to hold the emperor accountable. At that time, he was just an insignificant person who thought he was just going through the motions. But now he did come with a bold idea, which was to assassinate the important ministers of the Zhu Road Kingdom, Keith and Dale. Keith was a close relative of King Gus, and was in charge of the imperial guards in the imperial city, just like when Gus was still a prince. As for Dale, he was the current elder of the kingdom, and was in charge of many civil officials. Both of them were promoted after Gus ascended to the throne, and could be said to be Gus's most trusted and closest people. At this time, Gus had already set off for the Thunderstorm Dynasty with his division. Although there was still half a year before the birthday banquet, the earlier they got it, the more sincere they were. But Gus didn't know that as soon as he left, Lung Shiqi sneaked into the Imperial City. He stood in an ordinary inn in the Imperial City and opened his Byakugan to monitor almost the entire Imperial City. Unfortunately, after Gus became the king, he set up a powerful formation in the Imperial City. Even Lung Shiqi's Byakugan couldn't see through it. He monitored here for 2 days before confirming the location and life pattern of Keith and Dale. Late at night, Keith dragged his tired body out of the Imperial City. Gus left with the delegation. Although he was in power now, the ministers in the Imperial City simply ignored him. He had only been in power for 2 or 3 days, but he was already facing countless troubles, which made him, a master of Gang Spirit Realm, feel very tired. Alas, this is more tiring than asking me to fight. It's not easy to be the king, Keith muttered as he walked. But the next moment, he suddenly looked up and saw a colorful streamer in the night sky. Before it got close, he could feel the terrifying fluctuation of spiritual power and shocking spiritual power. Who is it? He roared. And at the same time, Gang Spirit burst out from his body. A crescent-shaped long saber slashed out, and more than 200 feet long swept out, seeming to tear the night sky apart. The guards around him were either in Spiritual Aperture Realm or Spiritual Pulse Realm. They immediately used all their skills to attack the sky. Just as everyone's attention was on the sky, a figure suddenly appeared behind Keith. This person was wearing a 5-colored armor, but within the 5-colored glazed light, a dazzling golden light burst out. After this person appeared, he flipped his palm, and in an instant, a golden light burst out, as if a sun had appeared, illuminating the night as if it was daytime. Keith instantly sensed something strange behind him. He turned around abruptly, but all he saw was endless Buddhist light. Extreme darkness and extreme light could make people blind. But Keith, as a master of Gang Spirit Realm, had already opened his eye aperture, so he would hardly encounter the situation of blindness. But at this moment, he actually really could not see anything other than the golden light. The first move of the Buddha's palm, the first appearance of Buddha's light. Although Keith couldn't see, he could still sense the fluctuations of spiritual power in the outside world. His scimitar slashed continuously, and streaks of saber aura raged like waterfalls. He thought that he would be able to force the enemy to retreat, but immediately after, he heard a series of clanking sounds, as if he was standing on an extremely hard rock. Suddenly, he felt a huge force hit him, as if a hand was pressing on his body. Bursts of violent power broke into his body, wantonly destroying his meridians. Puff! Keith raised his mouth and spat out a large mouthful of blood, but the force did not disappear. Instead, it turned around and pressed him to the ground. Boom, boom, boom. A series of loud noises came out. With the place where they were fighting as the center, the ground within a radius of hundreds of feet collapsed in an instant. Keith was almost crushed to death by this force, but he was also a master of Gang Spirit Realm. With a fierce look on his face, his long scimitar instantly broke, and was stained with his essence and blood. Immediately, the blood-like saber aura rolled back, and was about to devour Lung Shiqi. However, Lung Shiqi did not dodge. Under the continuous movement of his 10 fingers, 10 rays of starlight penetrated into Keith's body. At the same time, Keith's saber aura completely cut on Lung Shiqi's body. To his horror, with a loud bang, Lung Shiqi's colorful armor was cut into pieces, but that was all. It was difficult to move an inch further. What a strong physical body. Keith was shocked. Zhulu country had many spirit cultivators that trained in Gu techniques, so they rarely met spirit cultivators that trained in body refinement. Keith had also been through hundreds of battles, but he had never met an enemy with such a strong body. This was also the last thought in Keith's life. At this moment, the power contained in the Blood Thunder star-shattering finger burst out, and directly exploded Keith into countless pieces. Lung Shiqi relied on the strength of his physical body to kill a master of Gang Spirit Realm in a few moves. Even he himself was a little surprised. He could not help but secretly exclaim, "The Vajra unbreakable divine art combined with the Buddha's palm has such a terrifying power." For a long time, Lung Shiqi's fighting style was to use all kinds of powerful spiritual power to attack crazily and oppress others with force. He also practiced a powerful body refining technique, and his physical strength was far beyond that of ordinary spirit cultivators. It could even be said that ordinary body cultivators did not have the strength of his physical body. However, Leng Shiqi used his physical strength as an auxiliary or defensive role, and rarely used his physical strength to fight directly. This time, in order to hide his identity, he used the Vajra unbreakable divine art to crush Keith with abnormal and violent strength, which made him realize the strength of his physical strength again. More importantly, he actually felt very good about it. This feeling of punches hitting flesh really made him a little fascinated. Who dares to commit murder in King City? Just after Leng Shiqi killed Keith, two huge spiritual auras rapidly approached. Leng Shiqi frowned. The two were actually great masters of oneness of heaven and man. When did Gus recruit two more masters of oneness of heaven and man? However, now was not the time to think about it. With a thought, his body flashed with red, blue, and yellow divine light, and his figure disappeared before the two masters arrived. One of them saw Keith's miserable state and immediately shouted at the guards. "Trash! All of you are trash! You can't even protect Lord Keith. What use are you?" Not long after King Gus left, Keith, who was temporarily in power, was assassinated in King City. The two of them could not escape the blame, so this person vented his anger on the guards. The guards immediately lowered their heads with bitter expressions, not daring to speak. "All right. What's the use of being angry with them?" The other person said. "You saw the strength of that assassin. Even you and I felt a trace of threat. Keith was killed in a few breaths, and these guards could not intervene at all. The most important thing now is to quickly seal off King City and capture the assassin. We must not let him escape. Are you all deaf? Hurry up." Chapter 627. Just when the two Oneness of Heaven realm experts gave the order, Leng Shiqi stood at the top of a giant tree more than 20 miles away, holding a strange longbow in his hand. It was a 7th-level weapon, Spirit Fox Lotus Bow. Leng Shiqi injected his vigorous spiritual energy into it, and the bow suddenly trembled slightly. Purple and pink light flickered, and the shadow of a spirit fox loomed. All of a sudden, two crimson-red arrows formed in the air. With a single thought from Leng Shiqi, the pure gold earth dragon flame surged out and dyed the arrows with a layer of pure gold. The blue and white light in Leng Shiqi's eyes kept flashing. In his sight, he locked on a slightly defeated old man in an ancient mansion in Tortoise City. That man was the current state elder of Zhu Road Country, Delay. Delay and Keith could be said to be Gus's right-hand men. If the two of them died suddenly, it would plunge the Zhu Road Country into turmoil. At this moment, Gus was about to enter the territory of the Thunderous Dynasty. Even if he knew the news, he might not come back. If he really came back, he might be able to stabilize the situation quickly. But in that case, he would break his promise with the Thunderous Dynasty, which was very unfavorable to him. If he didn't come, the effect of only sending a message to appease the situation would be much smaller, which would buy some time for Princess Carol and Chu Li. So Delay must die. Leng Shiqi's spiritual energy surged, and even raised a terrible spiritual storm in the air. Then two many dragon-shaped arrows shot out. The two dragon-shaped arrows were like two dragons playing with a pearl, intertwining with each other and shooting straight at Delay with extreme flames in the night sky. 6th-level spiritual skill, double flying fire. As the current state elder, Delay was guarded by two gang spirit realm experts in his mansion. They were always outside Delay's door. But at this moment, the two dragon-shaped arrows came straight at him at an unimaginable speed. They seemed to be several miles away a moment ago, but in the blink of an eye, they had come to the top of the mansion. The two gang spirit realm guards just reacted at this time. They didn't have time to be surprised, and hurriedly used their strongest means to stop the double-flying arrows. In the next moment, a thick and heavy fist aura crashed toward the arrow with the weight of Mount Tai. The other person was a spirit caster. He directly bit the tip of his tongue, and spat out a strand of essence blood. At the same time, his body lit up with specks of dark red flames that condensed into layers of shields in front of him. However, when the brilliant dragon flames descended, they instantly extinguished the fist aura. As for the dark red flames, they actually collapsed in front of the pure gold earth dragon flames. The two of them actually couldn't even hold on for a breath of time. The two of them were horrified. Facing the threat of death, They couldn't care less about protecting the elder anymore. The two of them burst out with their fastest speed and dodged to the sides. Fortunately, the target of the twin flying fire was not them, allowing the two to escape with their lives. Unfortunately, they could escape, but Delay couldn't. Without the protection of an expert, Delay, whose cultivation was almost negligible, had no ability to resist at all. With a loud bang, a huge fire cloud exploded in the mansion, and even the entire King City was affected to a certain extent. Delay was burned into nothingness in an instant. Not only that, bursts of dragon flames overflowed everywhere. No matter what it touched, everything was burned to ashes. In just a few breaths, the surrounding thousands of feet had turned into scorched earth, and there were still traces of flames burning. Although they were only flames, the aura they emitted was extremely terrifying. This process was very long, but in fact, from the time Lung Shiqi killed Keith to the time he shot Delay, it was only a few breaths of time. On the other side, the two spirit cultivators in King City had just arranged for people to seal the city gate when they saw the twin dragon arrows streaking past like meteors. They also wanted to go over, but the distance was too far. They couldn't rush over at all. The two of them could only watch as Delay's mansion turned into a sea of fire, and watch as he was shot to death. Who the hell is it? Do you dare to fight fair and square? Both of them were almost driven crazy. Keith and Delay were assassinated one after another. They had a powerful cultivation base of unity of heaven and man, but they couldn't do anything about it. This huge sense of grievance made them all irritable. But they could only be angry here, because they hadn't even seen the appearance of the assassin so far. At least the assassin of Keith had shown up, but the assassin who shot Delay was probably 10 miles away, or even outside King City. How could they chase after him? Damn it, damn it! The man with a more violent temper immediately roared. Don't let me catch you, or I will let you know what it means to beg for death. The other person was much calmer. He said in a low voice. It seems that the assassination was premeditated. The enemy waited for King Gus to leave before taking action. And they must be very familiar with King City. The cultivation of each assassin is obviously in gang spirit realm, but the strength of his attack is very close to unity of heaven and man. Such a person is rare, so the person who did it has a very strong background. Is it the people of Great Moon Kingdom? Great Moon Kingdom had always been hostile to Zhulu country, and it was much stronger than Zhulu country. If it weren't for Beilu country between the two countries, Zhulu country might have been destroyed at any time. Very capable, but this matter is out of our control. We must inform King Gus immediately. Yes, not only that, the assassin could sneak into King City so easily and know the location of Keith and Delay, which means that there is probably a spy in King City. These hidden spies must be pulled out as well. You and I will act separately. The most important thing now is to stabilize King City. Alas, troubled times. Lung Shiqi, who was dozens of miles away, confirmed Delay's death through the supercilious eye, and then left smartly. This trip to Zhulu country not only acquired a lot of Buddhist cultivation methods and spiritual skills, but also set up a lot of backup plans. When he was stronger, he could plot to conquer the whole Zhulu country. Next, Lung Shiqi opened the system map, which showed the locations of the other 5 small countries. He was deep in thought, thinking about which small country he should go to first to gather information. Zhulu country and Beilu country both wanted to ride on the coattails of Thunder Flame Dynasty. In fact, there was no need to investigate deeply. He could let his Dark Thunder guards investigate. He looked at Golden Tribe Kingdom and Tuoba country, which had turned to Starfall Dynasty. He murmured, Starfall Dynasty is the furthest away. Their delegation should have set off. They will pass through 6 countries in the western region to Thunder Flame Dynasty, so their first stop must be Tuoba country. At the same time, Lung Shiqi still remembered the task given to him by Lord He Yen, so he decided to set off for Tuoba country immediately. Chapter 628. The Tuoba country was neither big nor small. It was about twice the size of the Zhulu country. It was not very strong among the 6 countries of the western region. It was at a level where it was not very strong. The Tuoba country had a good relationship with the Starfall dynasty. It was almost to the point of becoming a vassal. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were servile. In the past few days, the Tuoba royal city was unusually lively. Everywhere was filled with a festive atmosphere because the Starfall dynasty's delegation to the Thunderblaze dynasty had arrived. Not only that, the Starfall dynasty's delegation was not only going to celebrate Lei Qingjuan's birthday, but they also sent a prince to the Tuoba country for a marriage alliance. And this prince was the crown prince. The current emperor of the Starfall dynasty was in the prime of his life. His throne was stable, and the princes under him were relatively harmonious, at least on the surface. The crown prince's name was Ying Yuan. He was the eldest son of the Starfall dynasty's royal family. After he came of age, he entered the Eastern Palace. Unfortunately, Ying Yuan was born a little impulsive and was not shrewd enough. Although he was somewhat intelligent, he was far from enough to be the Eastern Palace's master or the future emperor. Therefore, there were many people who secretly coveted his position as the Eastern Palace's master. Ying Yuan was also aware of his shortcomings. However, his character was still innate. He wanted to change, but it was very difficult. However, he was indeed working hard to change. This mission to the Thunderblaze dynasty was snatched by him. The Starfall dynasty could be said to be the strongest dynasty in the world. As the crown prince, he was definitely qualified to celebrate Lei Qingjuan's birthday. Moreover, this trip could also show the Starfall dynasty's strength. It was a good opportunity to gain a lot of fame. Originally, everything should have gone smoothly. However, someone secretly hindered him. At the same time, they wanted him to marry the Tuoba country's princess. A princess and a prince, it sounded like a good match. However, the Tuoba country was a small country. The princess's status was not even comparable to some of the young ladies of the Starfall dynasty's nobles' families. Especially for Ying Yuan, the crown prince's consort was a very important way for him to strengthen his power. If the Tuoba country's princess really became the crown prince's consort, he would suffer a great loss. On the other hand, to the Tuoba kingdom, this was an enormously joyous occasion. With this, they could be said to have completely hugged the thighs of the Starfall dynasty. Right now, the entire country was celebrating. Thus, there was a festive atmosphere everywhere. At this time, Leng Shiqi was disguised as a person from the 6 kingdoms of the western region. He was on the streets asking for all kinds of information. After he learned about this, he was moved. This might be a good breakthrough. Late at night, the diplomatic group of the Starfall dynasty and the upper echelons of the Tuoba kingdom were gathered in the Tuoba kingdom's royal palace. They were all drinking and chatting merrily. The atmosphere was very lively. The king of Tuoba country, Tuoba Chi, said warmly to the jade-faced youth beside him, "Your Highness, you and I are going to be a family in the future. This time, we will be staying in Tuoba country for a while. This prince must treat your highness well so that you can have more contact with my daughter." The young man was none other than the crown prince of the Starfall dynasty, Ying Yuan. He smiled stiffly and said, "King Tuoba is right. I agree. It's a pity that I still have to make a trip to the Thunderfire dynasty. Considering the distance, I don't have much time." "Haha, you're right. Tuoba Chi drank a cup of wine and said with a smile, "Then let's talk about it when your highness returns. When that time comes, this diplomatic group will become a bridal party." Ha! Ying Yuan seemed to be a little unaccustomed to Tuoba Chi's enthusiasm. He could only smile perfunctorily. It was not until late at night that he finally got away and returned to the post house. However, what he did not know was that an inconspicuous bug had quietly flown into the royal palace's banquet. There were countless experts in the royal palace. For example, King Tuoba and Crown Prince Ying Yuan were guarded by experts of the oneness of heaven and man realm. However, no one had discovered the bug. And this bug was the Gu King. After the Gu King had advanced, it had an extremely strong ability to hide. Under normal circumstances, even experts of the oneness of heaven and man realm could not find its trace. After the banquet was over, the Gu King flew back to Leng Shiqi and told him everything it had heard. In fact, there was not much valuable information at the banquet. As for Ying Yuan's dissatisfaction with the marriage, it was expected. Therefore, Leng Shiqi continued to order the Gu King to follow Ying Yuan. After leaving the royal palace, Ying Yuan returned to the post house with an annoyed and gloomy face. As soon as he returned to his room he shouted, "What the hell? Princess of the Tuoba Kingdom? I don't care at all. I don't know who gave my father this rotten idea. If I find out who it is, I'll definitely teach him a lesson." A little eunuch beside him immediately said, "Your Highness, be careful of your words. Walls have ears." However, Ing Yuan became even more impatient. "Be careful of this and that. Don't even dare to breathe loudly. Now I can't even speak?" Although he said so, he knew in his heart that he had indeed made a slip of the tongue. Whether those words were passed to Tuobachi or his father, it would be extremely disadvantageous for him. Therefore, he obediently shut his mouth. After a short while, he seemed to have calmed down and said, "Little Yen, do you think I still have a chance to turn the tables?" The little eunuch Little Yen said, "This, I can't say for sure. After all, His Majesty has already given the order. No one dares to go against it. Even if your Highness takes the princess of the Tuoba Kingdom as your concubine, I'm afraid you'll be caught and bitten to death." Ing Yuan suddenly waved his hand impatiently. "Forget it. Go and get those people for me." Little Yan's expression froze. Then he hesitated. "Your Highness, those people's identities are too sensitive. If others know, they'll become the spearhead to attack your Highness. Your Highness, listen to my advice. It's better to cut ties with them." Sigh. Ing Yuan sighed. "How can I not know what you're saying? However, I have too little power at my disposal. I can only use them to attack the Thunderfire dynasty. Even if they have their own goals, I have no other choice. Go." "Yes." Little Yanzi also sighed softly and left. Soon 5 people walked in. They were all dressed in black and had expressionless faces. In the middle of the night, they looked a bit like corpses. As strange. Lung Shichi was surprised to see the 5 people through the supercilious eyes. He was immediately puzzled because he felt a faint trace of death aura from them. To be more precise, it was the kind of death aura that only corpses would emit. Because Lung Shichi controlled the underworld, he was extremely sensitive to this kind of aura. Therefore, even if those people used a special secret technique to conceal their aura, Lung Shichi still sensed it. Moreover, this aura gave him a sense of déjà vu. Lung Shichi frowned and thought for a while. Then he suddenly flipped through his mustard seed bracelet and took out a thick, dark zombie arm. Chapter 629. This zombie arm was obtained by Lung Shichi a long time ago after the collapse of the Mirage Spirit Secret Realm. In Lung Shichi's eyes, this item was of a lower level. There were a few times when he wanted to throw this item to the system for recycling, but because he had never seen anything like it again, he felt that it was quite rare, so he kept it. However, after the Mirage Spirit Secret Realm, he had never met a demonic cultivator who cultivated this kind of secret technique. He did not expect to meet one in the Tuoba country today. Moreover, these people clearly came with Ing Yuan, so they must be from the Starfall dynasty. Inside the hostel, Ing Yuan was entertaining the 5 demonic cultivators. He said to the leader of the group, "Yuanji, the reason why the 5 of you were able to escape and survive until now is all because of me. Now, I have a request." Yuanji looked quite old, but the skin on his face was relatively smooth. However, his eyes were cloudy and deep. He said, "We have already agreed to sneak into the Thunderfire dynasty, Your Highness. This is the condition that we have agreed on long ago." Ing Yuan sneered and said, "What? The 5 of you have saved your lives and taken so many resources from me. Now you are not even willing to help me with a small matter? Moreover, it is just a small matter. I want you to turn that princess into a retard. I believe that you can do it with your means, right?" Yuanji was silent for a few breaths with an expressionless face and said, "Yes, we can. However, there are many experts in the Tuoba country. It is inevitable that we will be found out. Moreover," he looked at Ing Yuan deeply and continued, "Your Highness has just arrived, and something happened to the princess. This is too much of a coincidence." What he meant was that Ing Yuan was too impulsive. Once this matter was out, everyone would think that Ing Yuan did it. What good would it do him? Ing Yuan said indifferently, "So what if they know? As long as there is no evidence, no one will dare to question me directly. Moreover, we are going to the Thunderfire dynasty soon. Do they dare to stop me? His words were full of confidence. This was the confidence that the powerful Starfall dynasty gave him. Indeed, even if others knew that he was the one who did it secretly, so what? What would they dare to do? Would they fall out with the Starfall dynasty because of this? Ying Yuan was sure that the kingdom of Tuoba would not dare to do so. As long as something happened to the princess, no one would be able to force him to marry an idiot to be the crown princess. That would be a disgrace to the imperial family. In this way, his worries would be resolved. However, Yuan Ji still refused to budge, as if he was still hesitating. Ying Yuan immediately pulled a long face and said in a deep voice, "The 5 of you don't forget your identities. You are fish that escaped the net of the corpse puppet sect. If others find out about this, think about what will happen to you." At this point, a deep gloom flashed in Yuan Ji's eyes. Finally he nodded. "We can help your highness this time, but the consequences have nothing to do with us. Of course, if anything happens, I'll take care of it," Ying Yuan said with a smile. Then they left, and Leng Shiqi ordered the Gu King to come back. After the Gu King came back and told him all the information, Leng Shiqi could not help but be shocked. It turned out that the 5 of them wanted to sneak into the Thunderblaze dynasty. At this moment, he was glad that he came personally. Otherwise, with Ying Yuan, the Starfall dynasty's crown prince, covering for them, the 5 devil cultivators would most likely be brought into the Thunderblaze dynasty. Although Leng Shiqi did not know what they would do in the future, it would definitely be unfavorable to the Thunderblaze dynasty. Therefore, he had to think of a way to get rid of the 5 of them. What made him even more surprised was that they were actually from the Corpse Puppet sect. Leng Shiqi had heard of the Corpse Puppet sect before. He had inadvertently seen it in the Dark Thunder Guard's information vault. The Corpse Puppet sect was once an extremely glorious sect. 100 years ago, it was ranked in the 6 Paths demon realm of the world sects. The sect's biggest specialty was the refining of corpses. The disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect used the corpses of spirit cultivators to refine them into puppet-like existences. Furthermore, they could retain a large portion of the deceased's cultivation and spirit techniques. They only needed to control the refined corpses to fight with others. This was similar to the Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect. The difference was that the disciples of the Imperial Beast Abode and the Blood Beast sect could only control one demon beast. After all, the demon beasts were carefully cultivated by the disciples. However, the most terrifying thing about the Corpse Puppet sect was that they could control multiple refined corpses at the same time. Therefore, the disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect were almost invincible in the same realm. Originally, the Corpse Puppet sect wanted to be the head of the 6 Paths demon realm. However, the problem was that the disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect were getting more and more arrogant. One must know that the strength of the refined corpse was closely related to the spirit cultivator's cultivation and the strength of the body. As the Corpse Puppet sect disciples' cultivation increased, they naturally needed to refine better refined corpses. However, where could they find so many high-level spirit cultivator corpses for them to refine? Therefore, the disciples of the Corpse Puppet sect gradually started to covet the corpses of the deceased experts in the various sects, especially a few slightly stronger sections. In order to show respect to their ancestors, they would normally use secret techniques to preserve their ancestors' corpses. This caused the Corpse Puppet sect to remember. At the start, the Corpse Puppet sect was very secretive and was not discovered. However, if one often walked by the river, how could one not wet their shoes? In the end, they still exposed a flaw. At this moment, all the sects and aristocratic families realized that their ancestors' graves had been dug up. The Corpse Puppet sect instantly became the target of public criticism. Within the Starfall dynasty, there were close to 100 sects and forces that joined forces to attack the Corpse Puppet sect. Originally, everyone thought that this was a battle without any suspense, even if the Corpse Puppet sect was one of the top sects in the 6 Paths demon realm. However, no one would have thought that the Corpse Puppet sect had accumulated a large amount of powerful refined corpses over a long period of time. They actually used their own strength to resist the attacks of over 100 sects. In the end, it even attracted over 10 Sky Origin Realm experts to take action before the Corpse Puppet sect was destroyed. Since then, The corpse puppet sect had become a taboo in the Starfall dynasty. Anyone who had a certain relationship with the corpse puppet sect was exterminated. For over 100 years, the corpse puppet sect had also disappeared without a trace. However, the corpse puppet sect was located within the Starfall dynasty. Therefore, generally speaking, the people of the Thunderblaze dynasty had never heard of this name. I didn't expect that the 5 demonic cultivators were actually from the corpse puppet sect. No wonder others didn't recognize their master. It turns out that they were from the Starfall dynasty. Lung Shiqi muttered. However, he couldn't help but have some doubts in his heart. Could it be that they had traveled through countless miles to Donglin County just for the 1,000-year-old Black Fiend demon corpse? They probably had other goals. Unfortunately, they died in the hands of Lung Shiqi before they could accomplish their goal. This corpse puppet sect seems to have revived from the ashes. This crown prince in Yuan has guts. He even dares to use the corpse puppet sect. However, this is also a good opportunity for me. Lung Shiqi's eyes flashed. He had already thought of a way to sow discord between the Tuoba country and the Starfall dynasty. Chapter 630. Yuan Ji and the other 4 demonic cultivators quietly left the inn under the cover of the night. One of them asked in a low voice, "Brother Yuan, are we really going to intervene in Ing Yuan's private affairs? Moreover, this is related to the Starfall dynasty and the Tuoba kingdom. If something happens, it's hard to guarantee that Ing Yuan won't push us out as scapegoats." "How could I not know what you're saying?" Yuan Ji also sighed slightly and said, "People have to bow their heads under the eaves. Now we have to rely on Ing Yuan to escape the pursuit of the Starfall dynasty's enemies. Bear with it. When we reach the Thunderflame dynasty, we'll be free to fly. But that princess lives in the palace, surrounded by experts like clouds. How should we do it? I've already thought about it. Let's do this." In the middle of the night, the palace had gradually quieted down. However, one of the courtyards in the imperial harem was still brightly lit. A haggard young girl sat in the room. She was Princess Shihan, who was about to marry Ing Yuan. "Princess, it's time to sleep." The maid beside her bowed and said. However, Princess Shihan acted as if she didn't hear it. She still sat there as if in a daze. At this moment, the maid and the guards outside the door didn't notice that a strange figure was lying on the roof of the room. Looking from afar, the figure blended into the night and avoided all the guards in the harem. Looking carefully, the figure was still twitching slightly. Every time it twitched, a wisp of invisible black gas would seep into the room and enter Princess Shihan's forehead. As time passed, the look in Princess Shihan's eyes became dimmer and dimmer. She also became somewhat dull. Gradually, the maid also realized that something was wrong. She reached out and gently touched Princess Shihan. Who would have thought that the princess would directly collapse? Her eyes were still wide open, but there wasn't a trace of spirit in them. The maid immediately cried out in alarm, "Your Highness!" Her cry immediately attracted the guards at the door. They suddenly rushed in and saw Princess Shihan's strange appearance. One of them immediately shouted, "Quick, call the imperial doctor!" The entire courtyard was thrown into chaos, but none of them noticed that the strange figure lying on the roof had disappeared. In a dark corner at the side of the palace, Yuan Ji's group of 5 stood there. Yuan Ji's 10 fingers were trembling nonstop, as if he was fiddling with something. After a while, a black shadow flitted across the palace walls and came to his side. How smooth. I didn't expect that none of the guards in the palace would notice the Li Poison refined corpse. The small Tuoba Kingdom's imperial palace is just a bunch of useless people. Yuan Ji nodded and said, "The concealment ability of the Li Poison refined corpse isn't bad, but if those Unity of Heaven realm experts were a little more attentive, they might have discovered it. As expected, it's somewhat useless. However, this is also good. At least we have dealt with Ing Yuan. As for whether or not the princess can be cured of the corpse poison, it will depend on their own abilities." However, the 5 of them didn't notice that when the poison refining corpse left the palace, a small bug flew out from its body. They also didn't know that there was someone watching them from a few miles away. This person stretched out a finger, and the Goo King obediently landed on it. This person was naturally Lung Shiqi. Lung Shiqi smiled quietly and said, It's easier said than done for a merely poison-refined corpse to hide from a few great experts of the union of heaven and man realm. It's all thanks to Gu King's help to conceal its aura. You did well. He lightly tapped the Gu King's head, and the Gu King immediately wriggled intimately. Thank you, master. You go and rest first. Lung Shiqi put the Gu King back into the pet space, and then waved his hand. A fainting wind suddenly appeared beside him, and a figure that others couldn't see was already standing beside him. To be more precise, it was a ghost figure. That was Lung Shiqi's ghost slave, Li Gui. Li Gui could leave the mansion of the dead, but he couldn't stay in the outside world for too long, and couldn't be too far away from Lung Shiqi. After he said a few words to Li Gui, Li Gui's figure moved and quickly floated away. Lung Shiqi slowly followed behind. At the same time, Yuan Ji and the others had just started to leave the vicinity of the palace, but they didn't walk for long before Yuan Ji's footsteps suddenly stopped. His expression stiffened for a moment, but it immediately turned into a look of pleasant surprise. The other 4 demonic cultivators had the same expression, and one of them said, "Big brother, did you feel it?" "I felt it. It's an extremely pure ghost aura. To be able to give birth to this level of ghost aura, it's definitely a demonic corpse that's over thousands of years old," Yuan Ji said with a bit of joy. For disciples of the corpse puppet cult, there was nothing more attractive than powerful corpses. At the same time, they were very sensitive to the aura of various corpses and spirits. It ran away. Quickly chase it. Yuan Ji couldn't completely lock onto the location of the ghost aura, so he immediately led the others to chase in the general direction. In reality, they were chasing after Li Gui. Li Gui was a ghost slave transformed by Lung Shiqi after Li Zhangtao's soul drank Granny Meng's soup. From a certain point of view, it was a real ghost, so of course it had an extremely pure ghost aura. Lung Shiqi thought of the 1,000-year-old evil corpse he encountered in the tomb of Marquis Boiwanhu in Donglin County. That evil corpse also gave birth to a demonic spirit, so he made Yuan Ji and the others think that Li Gui was a demonic spirit born from a powerful corpse, so he led them to a place. Li Gui was invisible and intangible. Even if Yuan Ji and the others were good at capturing aura, it was difficult to catch Li Gui in a short time. They didn't notice that the surrounding houses were getting fewer and fewer, and it became a little desolate. In the middle of the night, there were many guards patrolling, but Yuan Ji and the others paid too much attention to Li Gui, so they easily avoided all the guards with the cultivation of Gang Spirit Realm, and chased after Li Gui. They didn't stop until they came to a silent, solemn and somewhat gloomy place, and Li Gui's aura suddenly disappeared at this time. Yuan Ji and the other 4 released black qi at the same time to cover their bodies. Yuan Ji said in a low voice, "This seems to be the royal mausoleum of Tuoba country. They actually built the royal mausoleum in the royal city. Aren't they afraid of the feng shui? There must be masters guarding the royal mausoleum. What should we do?" Yuan Ji thought for a moment and said, "The aura just now must be a spirit born from the corpse of an ancestor of Tuoba country. You can imagine how precious the corpse is to be able to give birth to such a spirit. We can't give up such a good opportunity. We have to go in and explore. Even if we are discovered, Ing Yuan will help us. What are we afraid of? Let's go." Lung Shiqi, who was hiding in the dark, saw Yuan Ji and the others sneak into the royal mausoleum quietly. He smiled gently. The fish had taken the bait. P.S. The recommendation algorithm of Qijian has been changed recently, which is very unfavorable for old writers like us who earn more than 1 million yuan. Our income in recent days is not as much as what we earned in one day. The author was very helpless. Although it was a part-time job, the sudden decrease in income was too much of a blow. Recently, my condition was also very bad. I planned to save up some manuscripts during National Day, but I couldn't write anything. But as long as there are people reading, I will definitely persist in finishing the book, and the subsequent plot will be faster. I will start a new book when I finish the book with more than 2 million words. Finally, I would like to thank the book friends who have been supporting the author. This paragraph is not counted as a starting point coin. Chapter 631. At this moment, in the palace, a few imperial physicians were jogging towards the princess courtyard. The one who was running at the back was probably older. He was sweating profusely and panting. As he was running, a 9-colored light suddenly flashed across his eyes. The light was just a flash, and he did not show any signs of abnormality. Therefore no one noticed it. Not long after, King Tuoba arrived at the princess room. A few imperial physicians were treating the princess with sweat all over their foreheads. Tuoba kept pacing back and forth. His face was filled with anxiety. He had always doted on his daughter. She was going to marry into the Starfall dynasty. Nothing must happen to her. If the princess could not marry Ying Yuan, not only would the kingdom of Tuoba lose the protection of the Starfall dynasty, but they would also offend the Starfall dynasty. The consequences would be unimaginable. You've been looking at her for a long time. Tell me what's wrong with the princess? Tuoba King asked anxiously. One of the imperial physicians wiped the sweat off his forehead and answered, Your Majesty, from what I can see, the princess is not sick. It's just that there seems to be a weak and strange aura in her body. If we can't force that aura out, no matter how good the medicine is, it will be useless. Tuoba expression turned serious. The princess was not sick. Someone had done something to her. Thinking of this, things became complicated. Tuoba come and take a look, he said to a tall person beside him. This person was the commander of the palace's imperial guards. He had the cultivation of the unity of heaven and man realm. Tuoba expression did not look good. If the princess was really done to secretly do something to her, no matter who did it, he would not be able to escape from the crime of negligence. He walked to the princess with a gloomy face. He was a man and a woman. He injected a few streams of spiritual energy into the princess' body. After a short while, the princess' face turned slightly black, and her eyes became even more lifeless. Tuoba expression turned dark as well. He realized that there was indeed a black aura in the princess' body. That black aura had absorbed the spiritual energy that he injected into her body, and became even denser. He had never encountered such a situation before. If he was asked to fight, he would have no problem. However, when he encountered these things with strange auras, he was somewhat at a loss. He could only helplessly say, Your Majesty, there is indeed a wisp of black energy within Her Royal Highness' body causing mischief. The most troublesome thing is that the black energy is currently corroding Her Royal Highness' mind. Furthermore, it can also devour external spiritual energy. Normal methods are useless against it. It is truly vicious to the extreme. Who is it? Who is it? Tuoba couldn't help but shout when he heard this. He was even more furious. He was furious that the imperial guards and imperial physicians under him were all useless. They didn't even notice that someone had snuck into the harem. Now that the princess was in trouble, they couldn't even save her. What was the use of having them? However, Tuoba had not completely lost his mind. Even if he killed all those people now, it would be useless. The most important thing now was to treat the princess. He immediately said, No matter what method you use, you must cure the princess. All the resources in the national treasury are at your disposal. If you need any medicinal herbs, I will go and find them. If you can't cure the princess before Crown Prince Ying Yuan comes to pick her up, humph. Although he didn't make it clear, everyone knew what he meant. Everyone shuddered in their hearts. At this moment, the old imperial physician said in surprise, Your Majesty, I think the princess seems to be poisoned. With this new discovery, King Tuoba immediately asked, What did you see? Just tell me. Your Majesty, normal poisons have the ability to corrode the body. However, this poison is corroding Her Royal Highness' mind. I also sensed a certain amount of corpse energy from the black energy. Therefore, I think this poison might have come from. He stopped talking at this point. King Tuoba waved his hand and said anxiously, Why are you still keeping us in suspense? Hurry up and say it. Yes, I am quite knowledgeable, so I know a little more. This poison seems to be a corpse poison that the corpse puppet sect of the Starfall dynasty is proficient in using. The imperial physician said in a low voice. Starfall dynasty. Corpse puppet sect. Hearing these two names, everyone present fell silent. The kingdom of Tuoba and the Starfall dynasty were neighbors. Naturally, they had heard of the corpse puppet sect. However, this sect had been destroyed for hundreds of years. Why would it suddenly appear now? Why would it sneak into the palace and attack the princess? Even if it was really the corpse puppet sect, what was their motive? Questions appeared in everyone's mind. King Tuoba turned his head and asked, "Are you sure?" The imperial physician bowed and said, "Your Majesty, I am only guessing. I don't have any evidence. However, there is at least a 50% possibility. Regardless of whether it is the corpse puppet sect or not, do you think there is a way to save the princess?" King Tuoba was most concerned about the princess' safety. "Normal methods won't work. The only method I know is to find someone who has cultivated a technique that can restrain the corpse energy to force the black energy out of the princess. I can't think of anything else." There was a way, but what kind of technique could restrain the corpse energy? Where could they find someone at this time? Even if there was such a person in the palace, there was no guarantee that he could save the princess. Then what kind of technique can restrain the corpse poison? Metal element? Fire element or something else? King Tuoba's cultivation was not high, so he was not very clear about this. The imperial physician said, "A metal element technique can be used. However, it would be best if it is a yang element technique." King Tuoba was about to give the order to find someone, but at this moment, an ear-piercing sound suddenly pierced through the night sky. Many experts looked up and saw an arrow that looked like a stream of light shooting straight towards King Tuoba. "How dare you!" Tuoba Hui snorted coldly and opened one of his hands. A giant blue hand appeared in the air and easily caught the arrow. Tuoba Hui picked up the arrow and realized that it was not an arrow. It was obviously a very ordinary tree branch. A small tree branch could have such terrifying destructive power. The person who shot it was definitely not ordinary. "How dare you? How dare you? Do you think you can come and go as you please in the Tuoba palace?" King Tuoba was furious. First, the princess was harmed. Now someone dared to openly assassinate him. He was about to explode. However, Tuoba Hui said, "Your Majesty, please calm down. I don't think this person is here to assassinate you." "What?" King Tuoba frowned. The attack just now was indeed powerful. However, it was still within the range of the gang's spirit realm. With Your Majesty around, even if the attack was 10 times stronger, it would not hurt Your Majesty. Therefore, I don't think the person wants to assassinate Your Majesty. He has other reasons. Tuoba Hui checked the tree branch in his hand as he spoke. Tuoba Hui found a note in the tree branch unexpectedly. After reading it, his eyes suddenly widened, and then he hurriedly handed it to King Tuoba. King Tuoba was shocked when he saw the words. His expression changed and his eyes were filled with surprise. Then he shouted, "Summon some experts to protect the princess immediately. The rest of you go to the royal tomb." Everyone was stunned. They had just found some clues about the princess's condition. Shouldn't they go to find the right person to save the princess first? Why did they suddenly go to the royal tomb? However, since it was the king's order, they did not dare to disobey. Immediately, only a few imperial physicians were left to take care of the princess. The rest of them all hurried to the royal tomb with the king. Because there was only one line on the note. "Someone dug up your ancestral tomb." Chapter 632. The royal mausoleum was a place where the Tuoba kingdom's royal family was enshrined. To the Tuoba kingdom, it was sacred and inviolable, especially when the body of the first king was actually in there. It was enshrined by tens of thousands of people. It was a place that could not be lost. Regardless of the intentions of the person who shot the arrow and whether this was true or not, Tuoba Chi had to confirm it. Although the princess's poison was important, it was not like there was no way around it. Even if he was anxious, it was useless. If something really happened to the royal mausoleum, not only would the Tuoba kingdom's reputation be ruined, but he would also be too ashamed to face his ancestors in the future. Furthermore, Tuoba Chi was not afraid that this was a trick to lure the tiger away from the mountain. After all, this was the royal palace, and there were many experts. There were also experts from the Hall of Enshrining, so there was no need to worry. A group of experts from the royal palace hurried towards the royal mausoleum. There was a large group of imperial guards following behind them. Such a big commotion naturally attracted the attention of others, such as Crown Prince Ing Yuan. The Starfall dynasty's diplomatic group staying in the post house also noticed the commotion outside. Ing Yuan immediately called someone over and asked, "What happened outside?" "Your Highness, we are not very sure. We only saw the Tuoba king leading a large group of experts out in a hurry. From the looks of it, they are heading towards the north of the city. What are they going to do with such a large group of people?" "North of the city? What's in the north of the city?" Ing Yuan was also very confused. He shouted, "Let's go and take a look." Originally, this matter had nothing to do with him. However, he thought about it again. Not long ago, he had sent Yuan Ji and the others to attack the princess. Now that they had not returned, he did not know what the result was. Now that the people from the Tuoba kingdom were moving out with so many experts, there might be some connection between the two. This made him feel uneasy. He had to go and take a look. Inside the royal mausoleum, Yuan Ji and the others actually managed to sneak in without being detected by the experts guarding the royal mausoleum. They found an incomparably gorgeous coffin in the centermost position. Their faces were all filled with greed. This was because they could all feel an extremely strong corpse aura from this coffin. The corpse inside was not only well preserved, it must have been a supreme expert in the world when it was alive. Moreover, this corpse was placed in the King City, and was worshipped by tens of thousands of people in the Tuoba country, who knew how it had evolved. It was normal for it to have a spirit body. If they could obtain this corpse and refine it into a refined corpse, then they could do whatever they wanted. They wouldn't even care about the unity of heaven and man realm. However, Yuan Ji and the others did not act rashly, because this coffin must be protected by a formation. It was not easy for them to sneak in here. If they made any noise, even if it was just a little bit, they would immediately be discovered. Yuan Ji transmitted his voice to the others. "Let's set up an isolation formation first. Then think of a way to open the coffin." The other four nodded silently. They knew that they couldn't act too hastily. Otherwise, not only would they fail at the last step, they might not even be able to keep their lives. In fact, other than the five of them, there was another person who had snuck into the royal tomb, and that was Leng Shiqi. At this moment, Leng Shiqi concealed himself and stood in a corner of the royal tomb. The Gu King was lying on his shoulder, and it was breathing in and out a layer of faint fog, completely isolating their aura. Leng Shiqi looked at Yuan Ji and the others sneakily setting up the formation. He originally wanted to wait for King Tuoba and the other experts to arrive before making a noise to expose Yuan Ji and the others. However, he suddenly changed his mind. He thought to himself, looking at Yuan Ji and the others, it seems that they do have a way to open the coffin. Perhaps there are some treasures inside. He also had his eyes on the treasures in the coffin. Not long after, Yuan Ji used some unknown method to quietly open the coffin. Lying inside was a corpse in a yellow robe. This corpse had been dead for many years, but its appearance was still very well preserved, as if it had just died not long ago. The only strange thing was that half of the corpse was filled with a terrifying ghost aura, while the other half had a layer of faint golden light. The aura was very mysterious, and no one knew what it was. Yuan Ji and the others didn't dare to speak, but Leng Shiqi could see the shock and surprise in their eyes. Therefore, this corpse must have something extraordinary about it. At this moment, King Tuoba and the experts from the palace were about to arrive. Leng Shiqi suppressed the doubts in his heart, and prepared to take action at any time to attract everyone's attention. When King Tuoba and the others arrived at the royal tomb, they found that it was as calm as usual, and there seemed to be no problem at all. When everyone arrived, a spirit cultivator of the unity of heaven and man realm walked out of the royal tomb. This person was the guardian of the royal tomb. He bowed and said, "Tuobachin greets your majesty. Dispense with the formalities. Let me ask you, is there anything unusual in the royal tomb?" King Tuoba asked directly. Tuobachin shook his head and said, "There is nothing unusual." Hearing this, King Tuoba's expression froze. Was this really a diversion? Roar. Just as he was puzzled, a roar that was neither human nor beast could be heard, and the direction of this roar was actually the royal tomb. Immediately after, everyone felt waves of spirit energy and traces of corpse aura. Indeed, someone sneaked into the royal tomb. This is outrageous. King Tuoba shouted angrily. What are you all standing there for? No matter who is inside, they must be cut into pieces. The experts from the palace all rushed out like arrows. Only Tuoba Hui and Tuoba Chin did not move. Tuoba Hui had to protect King Tuoba. If even he left, what would happen if someone tried to assassinate the king? Tuoba Chin frowned. He had been guarding the royal tomb for a long time. Although he couldn't sense the entire royal tomb at all times, ordinary people couldn't easily hide from him and enter the royal tomb. Now, it seemed that someone had indeed entered the royal tomb. This was his dereliction of duty. What was even more troublesome was that King Tuoba actually knew about it earlier than him. This time, no matter who broke into the royal tomb, no matter what they did inside, after this matter was over, they would definitely be severely punished by the king. Therefore, he had to work hard now. It would be best if he could capture the intruder alive. He might even be able to atone for his crimes. Tuoba Chin lowered his head and said, "Rest assured, Your Majesty. I will definitely capture the thief." After saying that, he turned into a phantom and rushed into the royal tomb. After a few breaths, the royal tomb suddenly exploded with intense light and explosions. King Tuoba could only stand there anxiously. On one hand, he hoped to capture the thief. On the other hand, he hoped that they would restrain themselves when they made a move, so that they wouldn't break the ancestral tablets. Just as he was feeling anxious, Crown Prince Ing Yuan arrived with a few guards. Chapter 633. Seeing Ing Yuan come, King Tuoba's heart tightened. After all, Princess Shihan was still poisoned. If she couldn't be cured, she would become mentally retarded and the marriage would be ruined. He put away his expression and forced a smile. "Your Highness, it's so late yet I still disturbed Your Highness. I'm sorry for my rudeness." "It's fine. I'm just curious about what happened in the capital. Why are there so many experts gathering? What's ahead?" Ing Yuan asked. He didn't show anything on the surface, but his heart was still a bit perturbed. To be honest, this is the Tuoba country's royal tomb. The ancestors of the royal family are enshrined inside. I received news that there were thieves who snuck in, and are currently arresting them. King Tuoba didn't hide anything, but he smiled easily. "I believe that it won't take long for this matter to settle down. Your Highness should go back and rest early." When Ing Yuan heard the words royal mausoleum, his mind went blank for a moment. Others might not know the nature of the corpse puppet sect, but he, Ing Yuan, was the most clear. Ever since he secretly subdued Yuan Ji and the other four, he had secretly dug up many corpses for them. After all, the corpse puppet sect relied on this to gain a foothold. If they became stronger, it meant that Ing Yuan's wings were thicker, so he let them be. Therefore, Ing Yuan was even more clear about the huge attraction of powerful corpses to the corpse puppet sect disciples. Coincidentally, the Tuoba kingdom actually built their royal tomb in the royal city. Generally speaking, Thunderblaze dynasty and Starfall dynasty would specially choose a place with good feng shui for their royal tomb. Who would build one in front of their own house? Unless this place was the best treasure. Ing Yuan wasn't concerned about this. Instead, he thought that Yuan Ji and the other four were very likely the thieves who snuck into the royal tomb. Otherwise, who would sneak into the royal tomb? More importantly, he clearly sensed some corpse and ghost energy from the aftermath of the fight not far away. If he wasn't wrong, it should be Yuan Ji and the others. These 5 people were all in the middle and late stage of spirit astral realm. They were a very strong force anywhere, but under the siege of Heaven Man Unity Realm and numerous experts, defeat and death was only a matter of time. The 5 of them were forces that Ing Yuan secretly cultivated with great difficulty. To him, they were of great use and definitely couldn't be lost. Therefore, he had to protect these 5 people. Ing Yuan cursed in his heart. A bunch of brainless people. They really know how to find trouble. He smiled and said to King Tuoba, "Your Majesty, pardon me for asking, but how do you plan to deal with these people?" "Humph." King Tuoba snorted coldly and said, "I must tear them into pieces to relieve the hatred in my heart. However, it is best to capture them alive first." Those people were actually able to hide from the senses of a Unity of Heaven Realm expert and sneak into the royal mausoleum. They might have some accomplices. We can't let anyone go. When Ing Yuan heard this, his eyeballs began to move. Just as he was about to say something else, a shocking sword shadow suddenly shot up into the sky from the royal mausoleum, as if it was going to cut the night sky into pieces. A terrifying sword intent surged forth. It was merely a formless sword intent, but all the low-level guards below the 4th level of celestial being died in an instant. Tuoba Hui took a step forward and flipped his palm. A wave-like palm force surged out and protected the king and Ing Yuan. He said in surprise, "It's Tuoba Qin's heavenly spirit sword technique." The thieves were actually able to force him to use this technique. It can be seen that they are very difficult to deal with. King Tuoba's cultivation wasn't high, so he couldn't see anything. He asked, "Tuoba Hui, what is the background of those thieves?" Tuoba Hui replied, "There are a total of 5 thieves. Their combat strength isn't very strong, but the scary thing is that each of them can control 2 or 3 strange things. Those things are a bit like puppets, but they have a human appearance. From the aura, it is very likely that they are corpses." He paused and then couldn't help but raise his voice. "Could they be people from the corpse puppet sect?" King Tuoba's eyes widened slightly. As a king, his dignity made him feel awe-inspiring without being angry. When he heard that the thieves were people from the corpse puppet sect, which meant that they were the ones who poisoned Princess Shihan, he was instantly enraged. He shouted angrily, "Tuoba Qin, capture those 5 people alive, and I will pardon your negligence." Tuoba Qin heard and changed his sword technique. The soaring sword shadow turned from 1 to 5 and pierced down. Yuan Ji and the other devil cultivators immediately lost a refined corpse. The refined corpses were also refined by their own minds. When the refined corpse died, it caused them to suffer a backlash. They continuously vomited blood and were also injured. Yuan Ji transmitted a message to the other 4. "Run." Immediately, the 5 of them used all their strength to control all the refined corpses and rushed towards Tuoba Qin like moths to a flame. Tuoba Qin was the biggest threat here. As long as they could hold him back, they would have a chance to break out. Close to 10 refined corpses rampaged. Tuoba Qin sneered. These refined corpses might seem difficult to deal with to others, but in front of absolute strength, they were still not enough. He was about to draw his sword, but in the next moment, everyone didn't expect that all the refined corpses would self-destruct at the same time. Boom boom boom. The terrifying corpse chi and ghost chi wreaked havoc. The entire royal mausoleum began to collapse, and violent explosions rang out. Yuan Ji and the others suffered a backlash one after another. Their faces were as pale as paper. Fortunately, the self-destruction of several refined corpses had opened up an opening for them. The 5 of them burned their essence blood and quickly escaped. Tuoba Qin was held back by the self-destruction of the refined corpses. He himself also suffered some superficial wounds. Seeing that Yuan Ji and the others were about to escape, he was extremely angry. A huge edgeless heavy sword suddenly appeared in his hand. A sharp killing intent instantly locked onto the 5 of them. Although the sword had not been sharpened, everyone within a radius of several thousand feet could feel the sharp sword intent that was everywhere. Yuan Ji and the others were like arrows at the end of their flight. They also regretted entering the royal mausoleum because of their greed. In reality, they had been very successful. It was only when they were about to collect the corpses that something triggered the array of the royal mausoleum, causing them to be exposed. Now that they were at death's door, they could only try their best to escape. However, at this moment, Yuan Ji saw Ing Yuan from afar. His footsteps slightly paused. Ing Yuan naturally also saw Yuan Ji. He seemed to have guessed what Yuan Ji wanted to do. His heart instantly jumped a few times. He continuously gave Yuan Ji a meaningful glance, telling him to not expose his relationship with him. However, Yuan Ji still shouted from afar, "Your Highness Ing Yuan, save me!" Swoosh. King Tuoba and Tuoba Hui simultaneously looked towards Ing Yuan. Could it be that the 5 people from the corpse puppet sect were related to Ing Yuan? The corpse puppet sect was notorious. If Ing Yuan was really related to them, his reputation would probably be ruined. Of course, what King Tuoba cared more about was that Princess Shihan was poisoned by the corpse poison of the corpse puppet sect. The disciples of the corpse puppet sect were Ing Yuan's people. Then, could it be that Ing Yuan secretly ordered them to poison Princess Shihan? The more King Tuoba thought, the more he felt that this possibility was very high, because he was also very clear that Ing Yuan did not want to marry Princess Shihan. He despised her status for not being worthy of Ing Yuan, the crown prince of the Starfall dynasty. However, he did not expect that Ing Yuan would actually do such a despicable thing. Ing Yuan's expression was also very ugly. He had already cursed Yuan Ji's ancestors many times in his heart. Asking him for help at this time, wasn't it the same as admitting to it without being pressed? He could clearly feel that King Tuoba's gaze already carried a bit of coldness when looking at him. He hurriedly said, "Your Highness King Tuoba, there might be some misunderstanding here." Chapter 634. While Ing Yuan was arguing with King Tuoba, Yuan Ji and the others were running for their lives. At this most chaotic moment, a figure quietly appeared beside the coffin. This person was Lung Shiqi. The chaotic scene outside was all within his expectations, or rather, he was the one behind it. He was also the one who deliberately triggered the array of the royal mausoleum, causing Yuan Ji to be exposed. Now that it was a mess outside, he should have escaped far away and observed in the dark, but he took a certain risk and stayed, because he also had his eyes on the corpse in front of him. For some reason, when Lung Shiqi approached the corpse, the spirit crystal in his body began to tremble slightly, especially the black and golden dragon patterns on the spirit crystal. They were shining brightly. Lung Shiqi had no time to study it. He reached out and prepared to put the corpse into the system space, and then sneak away when no one was paying attention to him. His plan was good, but when he touched the corpse's eyes suddenly opened. The corpse's eyes were lifeless, but Lung Shiqi could see the terrifying killing intent in them. Then the golden and black aura on the corpse surged. Lung Shiqi immediately knew that things were not good. If King Tuoba and Crown Prince Ing Yuan found him, then with their shrewdness, they would definitely know that everything tonight was secretly planned by someone. Then Lung Shiqi's plan to sow discord between the two sides would basically fail. Lung Shiqi had an idea, and immediately teleported into the mansion of the dead with the corpse. The aura of the corpse only flashed, but as Lung Shiqi expected, it still attracted some people's attention. Inside and outside the royal mausoleum, everyone with cultivation above the gang spirit realm looked over at the same time. Of course, all they saw was an empty coffin. It was also because the coffin was empty that Tuoba Chin was even more furious. Other ordinary imperial guards might not know who was in the coffin, but Tuoba Chin knew best. The person lying in the coffin was the first king of the Tuoba kingdom. He was the ancestor of the current emperor. However, the old ancestor's corpse had disappeared. As the guardian of the royal mausoleum, Tuoba Chin had committed a great crime. On the other side, Tuoba Hui also saw it with his sharp eyesight. He immediately panicked and said to King Tuoba, who was still talking to Ing Yuan, "Your Majesty, the body of the Grand Elder is missing." Ing Yuan was still explaining to King Tuoba. Even though his excuse was a little weak, at least it calmed King Tuoba down a little, at least on the surface. What? However, Tuoba Hui's words shocked King Tuoba. His eyes turned red. Not only had his ancestral grave been dug up, but he had also lost his ancestor's corpse. He would never be able to get rid of his reputation as an unfilial king. He glared at Yuan Ji and the others and said fiercely, "Hand over the grand ancestor's corpse, and I can leave your corpses intact." When Yuan Ji heard this, he was stunned. He subconsciously turned his head to take a look. Sure enough, there was nothing in the coffin. Even though he didn't know what was going on, he knew very well that they definitely couldn't take the blame for this. He immediately said, "We didn't touch the corpse." *T. Do you dare to say that your target wasn't the corpse? Tuoba Chin walked over with his sword. With every step he took, his sword will became sharper. He shouted, "Who else could it be if it wasn't you? If you don't hand it over, I will let you know what it means to live a life worse than death." The faces of Yuan Ji and the others were as black as the bottom of a pot. Their target was indeed the corpse. However, they were discovered when they opened the coffin and didn't have time to collect it. Later on, when they were fighting, they didn't pay attention to the corpse. Who knew where it went? Yuan-ji had to bite the bullet and said, "We really didn't take it. Maybe it was destroyed by the aftermath of the battle." Tuoba-chin said angrily, "Nonsense. Even if you are all dead, nothing will happen to the grand ancestor's corpse. Since you are so stubborn, I can only kill you and take it back myself." He pointed the heavy sword in his hand. Suddenly, the heaven and earth trembled. Endless spiritual energy of heaven and earth gathered and condensed into a sword shadow. Seeing this, Ing Yuan's expression changed. "Wait. Crown Prince Ing Yuan, what else do you want to say?" King Tuoba's cold voice sounded. He had changed the way he addressed Ing Yuan from "Your Highness" to Crown Prince Ing Yuan. It was obvious that his attitude towards Ing Yuan had changed. Although he couldn't be 100% sure that Ing Yuan was the one who ordered Yuan-ji and the others to poison the princess, it was basically Ing Yuan who did it. Because Ing Yuan did have the motive to do so. Since someone could sneak into the princess's room, it would be easy to kill the princess. However, the truth was that they only poisoned the princess. This was nothing more than a way to prevent the princess from marrying into the imperial family. At the same time, they didn't want to harm the princess's life. The only person who had the motive to do so was Ing Yuan. If it was only this matter, King Tuoba could only hold his nose and swallow this anger. After all, the national power of the Tuoba kingdom and the Starfall dynasty couldn't be compared at all. Even if Ing Yuan was the one who did it, King Tuoba couldn't do anything about it. However, what really touched King Tuoba's bottom line was that the other party actually broke into the royal tomb, insulted the ancestors, and even stole the grand ancestor's corpse. This was no longer a matter of face. As a person, as a junior, as a king, this was his principle and bottom line. You are the crown prince of the Starfall dynasty. You have a noble status and a powerful background, so he could tolerate it. However, when you secretly harmed someone's daughter, dug up their ancestral tomb, and even stole their ancestor's corpse, even if King Tuoba was a bastard, he couldn't tolerate it. Ing Yuan also heard the change in King Tuoba's tone. He started to feel anxious. He realized that this matter was completely out of his control. When he decided to let Yuan-ji secretly harm Princess Shihan, he had the mentality of going all out. Anyway, his background was strong enough. Even if he was found out, he wasn't afraid. However, he definitely didn't expect Yuan-ji and the others to actually go back and dig up the ancestral tomb of the Tuoba kingdom. Now, there was no way to clean up the mess. Seeing that Ing Yuan didn't answer, King Tuoba spoke first. "Crown Prince Ing Yuan, I can consider everything that happened tonight as the reckless actions of the 5 corpse puppet sect remnants. As long as I take the lives of these 5 people, take back their corpses, and detoxify the princess, I can pretend that nothing happened tonight." He had already stated his bottom line. As long as Ing Yuan didn't interfere in this matter, and continued to marry Princess Shihan, then the Tuoba kingdom would still be willing to be on good terms with the Starfall dynasty. Otherwise, even if the Tuoba kingdom was weak, they wouldn't be willing to be a dog without any dignity. Ing Yuan fell silent. The strongest force in his hands was Yuan-ji and the others. Even if they weren't reliable, they were still a rare fighting force. He didn't want to give up just like that. Chapter 635. Both sides were in a stalemate. Tuoba-chin's sword shadow was still locked onto the 5 of them. With a wave of his hand, Yuan-ji and the other 4 would die on the spot. Whether King Tuoba and Ing Yuan would shed all pretenses of cordiality or pretend to reconcile, it all depended on Ing Yuan's reaction. Seeing that Ing Yuan was still hesitating, Yuan-ji could tell that Ing Yuan was about to give up on them. He immediately transmitted his voice to Ing Yuan. "Prince Ing Yuan, we really didn't take away the corpse. This is a matter of life and death. I'm not lying. As long as you protect us, we're willing to swear a blood oath to serve you with our lives. We'll do anything for you." Ing Yuan was moved by Yuan-ji's words. The blood oath was a very powerful restriction among the devil cultivators. Once the blood oath was made, the cultivator would lose all his power if he broke the oath. If he was careless, he might even die from the backlash of the devil cultivators. Since Yuan-ji was willing to swear a blood oath, Ing Yuan didn't think that they had to lie. He said in a deep voice, "King Tuoba, I think there are still many things worth investigating. Why don't we detain them first? It won't be too late to talk after we find out the truth. Prince Ingyuan, are you determined to protect them? This time, King Tuoba was not angry at all. Instead, he said this very calmly. Although his tone was very calm, it also expressed his attitude. A few hours ago, he was still serving Ingyuan. He was just short of serving Ingyuan tea. His reaction now was equivalent to telling Ingyuan that he wasn't going to serve Ingyuan anymore. Ingyuan was getting a little impulsive. He thought to himself, the Tuoba kingdom isn't even as powerful as the Starfall dynasty. How dare they put on airs in front of me? That's good too. This way, this consort won't be marrying that whatever princess. It can be considered as having achieved my goal. At least he was a shrewd person. Of course, he couldn't say these words out loud. He shouted at Tuobachin arrogantly. Put away your sword and let them come. Veins popped out on Tuobachin's hands. He almost couldn't control himself. He looked at King Tuoba tentatively, hoping that King Tuoba would say something. He transmitted his voice. Your Majesty, this is the Tuoba kingdom, the royal tomb. If we let them leave just like that, how can we face our ancestors? Also, the patriarch's corpse had not been recovered, and the princess's poison had not been cured. Was he going to let it go just like that? According to this subject's idea, we should kill 4 of them, and leave the last one alive. Let's see if he will confess or not. This subject is willing to bear all the blame. Even if I have to sacrifice my life, I can't let the Tuoba kingdom be humiliated. King Tuoba's cultivation was not strong. He was only in the spiritual pulse realm, and this was achieved through the use of elixirs. He could not condense his voice into a thread, so he shook his head slightly. He could ignore Ingyuan, but if he really killed Yuanji and the others, then he would completely fall out with Ingyuan. No matter how much the Tuoba kingdom needed the Starfall dynasty's support, he did not have the confidence to offend the Starfall dynasty. Tuobachin sighed in his heart. In fact, he had already guessed that this would be the outcome. After all, the Tuoba country was weak. Weakness was the original sin. He was already prepared to stop, but one of the demonic cultivators knew that he had been saved. He had experienced the terror of life and death in a short period of time, and now he was a little arrogant. He sneered. Your name is Tuobachin? Aren't you very powerful and arrogant? I'm standing right here now. Come and kill me. If you don't kill me when you die in the future, I will definitely dig out your corpse and refine it into a refined corpse. I will enslave you for the rest of your life. How could Tuobachin endure such words? His heart was already filled with boundless anger. After being provoked by that person's words, he could no longer hold it back. He suddenly swung his heavy sword down, and the sword shadow that stood between heaven and earth slashed down at the same time. The violent sword intent and terrifying spiritual highland exploded, and even the night sky seemed to be twisting. Half of the royal city was enveloped by the sword intent. Many ordinary people instantly felt a piercing pain all over their body, and they were rolling on the ground in pain. The 5 demonic cultivators that were targeted by him felt as if they were in a sword prison. The chi and blood in their bodies were sealed by the invisible sword intent, and they had no ability to resist at all. Tuobachin's sudden attack shocked everyone. The furious unity of heaven and man realm was too terrifying. Even if Tuoba Hui wanted to save them, it was too late. Stop. Don't you dare. Ingyuan and King Tuoba shouted at the same time. Neither of them wanted Yuanji and the others to die. Needless to say, Ingyuan didn't need to say much. If they died, Ingyuan wouldn't have any capable experts under him. If Yuanji and the others were to die here, the Tuoba kingdom would turn against Crown Prince Ingyuan. That would be tantamount to falling out with the Starfall dynasty. This would only bring harm to Tuoba kingdom and no benefits. However, Tuobachin had already made his move. Even if he recovered from the shock and withdrew most of the sword intent, the remaining power was enough to instantly kill 4 demonic cultivators. Only Yuanji was left. Because his cultivation was the highest and he had a strong trump card, he barely managed to survive. He didn't dare to stay here for a moment longer. Even if Ingyuan was here, Tuobachin still dared to make his move. Since he had already killed them, he didn't mind killing one more. He immediately ignited all the chi and blood in his body and frantically fled out of the city. In Yuan was also furious. His character was originally a little impulsive. At this moment he didn't care anymore. He roared, "Good Tuoba Kingdom. You dare to kill my men. Now that you're almighty, I'd like to see how you're going to withstand the wrath of the Starfall dynasty in the future." After he finished speaking, he left with his men and left Tuoba Kingdom with the diplomatic group in the middle of the night. King Tuoba looked at the corpses of the 4 demonic cultivators and was stunned for a moment. He was already in despair. He could already foresee that it wouldn't be long before the Starfall dynasty cut off all trade routes with Tuoba Kingdom. If the situation was serious, they might even send their troops to take over a portion of the cities. If this continued, the Starfall dynasty wouldn't even need to make a move. The other countries in the western region would attack Tuoba Kingdom. It's dangerous, it's dangerous." King Tuoba mumbled. Looking at his expression, he seemed to have aged a few years in just a few breaths. Tuoba Chin walked up to him and knelt down. He said, "Your Majesty, this is my fault. I'll go look for In Yuan tomorrow. At most, I'll compensate him with my life." King Tuoba waved his hand helplessly and said, "Forget it. You've already come to this point. If you go, you'll just be throwing your life away. Pass down my order. Tell all the borders to pull back their defensive lines and be ready for war at any time." In just one night, Tuoba Kingdom, which had always been on good terms with the Starfall dynasty and flattered them, was about to turn against them. The initiator of all this was no longer in this world. Lung Shiqi was currently entangled with the strange corpse in the mansion of the dead. Chapter 636. In the mansion of the dead, Lung Shiqi pressed one of his hands on the corpse's shoulder. Miraculously, the thick corpse qi and the mysterious golden airflow on the corpse were all absorbed by Lung Shiqi through his hand. Lung Shiqi didn't know why this was happening. He could only use his inner vision to see that the black mark and the golden dragon pattern on his spirit crystal were flickering as if they were breathing. Ever since he entered the half-step gang spirit realm by condensing his spiritual crystal in the dragon vein, there were 3 strange things on his spiritual crystal. They were the star mark, the black mark, and the dragon pattern. Needless to say, the star mark was naturally brought about by the bloodline of the Star Clan. When he first activated the bloodline of the Star Clan, the star mark also reacted. As for the dragon pattern, it was most likely related to the environment of the dragon vein. Then what was the black mark? Lung Shiqi once guessed that it might be related to his other bloodline, the Dark Shadow Clan bloodline. However, he did not really activate the Dark Shadow Clan bloodline, so the black mark had been quiet all this time. For some reason, it suddenly began to crazily absorb the corpse qi on the corpse. Not only the corpse qi, but also another mysterious force was absorbed by Lung Shiqi, and absorbed by the dragon pattern. The dragon pattern was condensed in the dragon vein, and the dragon vein was the foundation of the Thunder Yin dynasty's luck. Therefore, Lung Shiqi guessed that the golden energy might be something similar to luck. According to the Tuoba king, this corpse was the corpse of the first king of the Tuoba kingdom. In Lung Shiqi's impression, although the Tuoba kingdom was a small kingdom, it had existed for hundreds of years. For such a long time, the corpse had been stored in the Tuoba kingdom's capital, and had been worshipped by the people for generations. Perhaps some strange energy had been born from it. If another few hundred years had passed, who knew what this corpse would have evolved into? Now it was all in vain, and Lung Shiqi had benefited. Unfortunately, after absorbing the golden energy, Lung Shiqi did not feel any change. On the contrary, absorbing the corpse qi and ghost qi greatly increased his demonic power, and even his cultivation level rose. In a short period of time, he had already condensed 2 rank 3 stars in his spiritual star C. Now, as long as he condensed 4 more third-order stars, he could break through to the 5th level of gang spirit realm. However, something unexpected happened at this moment. The corpse actually opened its eyes. Those eyes were like a pair of dead fish eyes, looking very horrifying. What was even more frightening was that those eyes actually revealed a dense cold light. Lung Shiqi couldn't help but be shocked. This person had been dead for hundreds of years. Could it be that there was still a trace of consciousness left? The corpse could no longer allow the Lung Shiqi to absorb its energy. It began to resist fiercely. The thick, fishy ghost chi around it turned into a ferocious demon that opened its mouth to swallow the Lung Shiqi. One of Lung Shiqi's hands was fixed on the corpse's shoulder, so he had to stretch out the other hand and put it in front of him. The sacred light of Buddha suddenly appeared, and swastikas floated out, bathing the Lung Shiqi in it. As soon as the demon touched the light of Buddha, it immediately screamed. The ghost image was like an ice cube thrown into boiling water, and half of it evaporated in an instant. Even the corpse began to twitch, and a hoarse and harsh groan came out of its mouth. Lung Shiqi pinched the Buddha's hand, but he did not directly purify the ghost image. He was afraid that if he did so, he would not be able to absorb any more demonic qi. Seeing that his cultivation was skyrocketing, he did not want to miss this opportunity. He suppressed the ghost image with the light of Buddha, while quickly absorbing the 2 kinds of energy from the corpse. At the same time, another rank 3 star C appeared in his spiritual star C. However, Lung Shiqi also found that the corpse seemed to be more shriveled than before. As time passed, the corpse became more and more shriveled and even shrunk, but Lung Shiqi's cultivation was increasing rapidly. After about an hour, Lung Shiqi's body was full of all kinds of spiritual gang, and his aura suddenly jumped to the 5th level of the spirit gang realm. At this time, the power of the corpse had almost been completely absorbed, and only the body was barely preserved. It seemed that as long as a gust of wind blew, it would turn into ashes. With the breakthrough of Lung Shiqi's cultivation, he could also take back his palm. During these 2 hours, he had been thinking about why such a thing had happened. He felt that the most likely reason was that the black mark on the spirit crystal had the ability to absorb all kinds of yin attribute energy. The reason why he did not have this ability until now was because he had not fought with the spirit cultivator of the devil path since he left the dragon vein, nor had he come into contact with all kinds of demons and ghosts, so he did not know that he had such an ability. Of course, this was only his own guess, and whether it was true or not still needed further verification. If that was the case, then it would be equivalent to him finding a shortcut to quickly increase his cultivation. Lung Shiqi clenched his fists and felt the power of the 5th level of the spirit gang realm. He raised a satisfied smile at the corner of his mouth. He raised his hand and prepared to turn the corpse into ashes. However, at this moment he suddenly paused. He had a sudden thought and had another plan. Lung Shiqi rubbed his chin thoughtfully and said in a low voice, "Li Gui." Whoosh, a gust of cold wind blew, and Li Gui appeared beside Lung Shiqi. "Do you have the ability to attach to a body?" Lung Shiqi asked. Li Gui nodded stiffly. Lung Shiqi ordered, "Attach to this corpse." Li Gui immediately lay down and directly sank into the corpse. Then the eyes of the corpse flashed, and with a swish, it stood up straight. Then something even stranger happened. Now the skin of Li Gui's whole body gradually turned purple and blue, and the meridians on the surface of his body bulged, but the muscles on his body were tall and thin. Li Gui seemed to be not used to the state of having a body. He staggered forward a few steps, and looked a bit like a zombie. This was not what surprised Lung Shiqi the most. What surprised him the most was that at this moment, Li Gui's aura was actually comparable to a spirit cultivator at the late stage of the spirit aperture realm. A ghost slave's strength could increase greatly after having a body? Lung Shiqi had some doubts in his heart, but thinking that Li Gui was a master of the oneness of heaven and men realm when he was alive, and the corpse he attached to was extraordinary, it was not impossible for the two to combine to have such strength. At this time, Lung Shiqi thought of another thing. He took out a strange weapon from his ring bracelet, and threw it to Li Gui. It was the 6th level spiritual weapon he got from the lottery in Ningyang County, the clavicle hook. Lung Shiqi had no use for this spiritual weapon, but it was very suitable for Li Gui, especially with the clavicle hook in Li Gui's hand, and with his terrifying appearance he really looked like a messenger of hell. Lung Shiqi believed that with Li Gui's special ability and the clavicle hook, his strength was between the spirit aperture realm and the spirit astral realm. This kind of strength was nothing to Lung Shiqi now, but it was also good to have a power that he could use at will. For example, it was Li Gui's credit that he was able to lure Yuanji and the others into the royal tomb. Thinking of this, Lung Shiqi did not know how the situation outside had developed. He guessed that there must have been hostility between Ing Yuan and King Tuoba, but he really did not know what the result was. However, he did not dare to go out directly. Calculating the time, there should still be many imperial guards in the royal mausoleum at this time. To be safe, he planned to stay a little longer. Therefore, he sat down cross-legged to consolidate his cultivation. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.